Three, two, one.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Franchise Deep Dive, the podcast where we break down, dissect, and discuss all of your favorite and least favorite movie franchises. I'm Jake.
And I'm Josh.
And today we continue a trend that we're not used to over here on Franchise Deep Dive, and that is for 2 episodes in a row, we're actually talking about good movies, which is a bit of a change.
A round of applause.
Yeah. Clap it up, guys. Typically, we've been talking about a lot of bad movies on a lot of these episodes, and it's nice to kind of break away from that and talk about some movies that we actually enjoy and have nice things to say about. So obviously you clicked on the title of this episode, so you know that we are discussing a trilogy that I think holds a special place in both Josh and mine's hearts, and that is, of course, the Cornetto Trilogy from Edgar Wright. 3 films, reusing a lot of the same actors. It's kind of a loose trilogy in a sense that not all of the... You see a lot of the actors reappear, and the 2 stars are always Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, but none of the stories connect. They're not. It's not like 1, 2, 3. You can really watch these films in any order. Some jokes carry over. They have some reference jokes to some jokes from Hot Fuzz will end up in World's End and kind of vice versa and stuff. But either way, guys, we are doing the Cornetto Trilogy, and if you guys are new here, if you don't know how things work, basically we're just going to talk about all 3 films in release order. So Shaun of the Dead, onto Hot Fuzz, and then ending it with The World's End. And we also, aside from talking about our personal feelings and thoughts on the films and what we liked and didn't like, we also try to, break down some trivia, behind the scenes elements, and give you guys a real deep dive into these movies. So with all of that out of the way, the last thing I kind of have with a little bit of opening house cleaning is just to head over to our Patreon. If you guys like our content, I'll probably plug this again at the end, but if you don't know, we have a Patreon out, Franchise Deep Dive. You can go check us over there. We only have 1 tier as of right now. It's $2 a month. So, the price of a Dunkin' Donuts small coffee. If you can skip out on that one day and instead use your Keurig, make a K-Cup. It's $2 a month. You get access to all of our bonus content. I'm going to start putting up polls on there so you guys can kind of vote on future franchises that we get to. Some stuff, especially seasonal stuff, like we're going to talk about Christmas stuff during Christmas and kind of horror in October, but outside of those months, we're kind of open to doing anything that you guys want to hear us talk about. So make sure to head over to our Patreon, subscribe there. Any sort of monetary help that you guys can throw our way helps us keep the lights on, keeps the show going, and we appreciate all that support. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the Cornetto Trilogy, starting off with Shaun of the Dead, and I will pass the torch over to Josh.
Cool. Thanks, Jake. So our first film we are discussing is, we're going to tackle the strawberry flavor of the Cornetto ice cream, which is the 2004 Zom rom-com Shaun of the Dead from Edgar Wright. And this was also written by Edgar and Simon Pegg. Just give you the little IMDb synopsis here to start it off. The uneventful, aimless lives of a London electronics salesman and his layabout roommate are disrupted by the zombie apocalypse. Now, obviously, it's a very simplified plot of this movie, but we're gonna go into it in very, very great detail. But yeah, so this was the first. I think this was Edgar Wright's directorial debut.
It was not, but a lot of people believe it was. I think he has 1 or 2 movies before.
Oh, he does.
If I'm correct. Yeah, I've never seen them. From what I understand, they don't have particularly the best of reviews, but okay. I think he has a Western comedy.
Let's see here.
If I'm correct. I think this was actually his 3rd movie.
Okay, because he did a lot of TV stuff, most notably Spaced, with also Simon Pegg, and a lot of the people you're going to see in Shaun of the Dead. Trying to see these movies that he directed, though. I see a bunch of TV series.
Okay, I found one. He had one before Shaun of the Dead. It's called A Fistful of Fingers. So obviously a play on A Fistful of Dollars from the Dollars trilogy, the Western. I've never seen it, but I'm actually curious to check it out. Obviously loving a lot of his films and his work and writing style and directorial vision. So kind of curious.
Yeah, I am too. And I wonder. I noticed here that Simon Pegg's name is first in IMDb. I wonder if he had... I think they had an equal part in writing, but I'm wondering why his name is first there. And, I think Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright's is first. So I wonder if this was like brought to the table from Simon Pegg first. I don't know. But
I'm actually it kind of reminds me of I just had it in my head. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of thing where in the entire franchise, chainsaw is always one word except for the first original movie. Chainsaw is 2 words. It's chain space
Is it?
saw. Yeah, and then if you look at the rest of the movies, it's chainsaw is just one word.
I don't think I noticed that. But yeah, so budget for this movie was $6 million and box office is about $38 million. So seems like a pretty good return on that. Let me see. Well, we'll get into the other budgets, but I'm curious how like that grew as the series went on. But I believe when they made this was not like a plan to do like a trilogy, right? It was just like, let's make a film. I don't know when they decided to like.
Yeah, so actually, I was kind of looking into things, and you're right, it wasn't a planned trilogy. I'm sure probably after Hot Fuzz, they were like, oh, we could do one more of this kind of style and kind of tie it into the whole Cornetto thing. But there was originally a planned sequel. Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg had ideas for a sequel to Shaun of the Dead. But then they kind of just realized that they were really content with just Shaun being a standalone film. Which, I mean, again, we talked about this being a trilogy, but it's like a loose trilogy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Three Colors trilogy or the Vengeance trilogy from Park Chan-wook, where it's just kind of 3 films that have similar themes and tone and style. But I'm trying to think of the title, because it was From Dusk Till Dawn.
Was that actually? I've seen that before. Was that actually supposed to be the sequel?
Yeah, the sequel title was apparently going to be From Dusk Till Dawn, and it's funny because in the animated film Into the Spider-Verse, you can actually see a poster for From Dusk Till Dawn in the background of one of the shots. I think when one of the characters is walking around Times Square. So I think that's a little funny.
Yeah, wow. I gotta watch that movie again. Give me another excuse to watch.
Yeah. You could just look up the picture. If you type in From Dusk Till Dawn, it'll show one of the Spider-Verse, like the screenshot of that scene.
I'm thinking I gotta watch the movie, Jake. I don't know. I haven't
You
seen
should.
it.
I mean, Into the Spider-Verse is like literally incredible. Little side tangent. That movie's fantastic. But back to Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. So
any other backstory?
Backstory. Not off the rip here. I'll probably find stuff to like sprinkle in as we go. But yeah, so this was like I initially said, it has zombies in, like, so horror genre mixed with like romantic comedy and also drama. So there's a lot of genres infused in this bad boy. I'm not sure what is the favorite genre of Edgar Wright, because this guy's all over the place. He just loves them all, and he is damn good at mastering all of them. I
mean, out of all the films I've seen of his, I've only really disliked one, and it was Last Night in Soho. Other than that, I usually really enjoy his stuff.
Which I've yet to see, and I know Jake hates it, so.
It's just so not good. But, yeah, no. So anything else before we really dig into it?
Now, let's get into it. Let's get into the strawberry of Cornetto.
All right. Well, to kind of kick things off, I kind of have a question for you, and it's just sort of, when did you first watch this? Because I think you watched this earlier on in life, like way before I did. And it's obviously a film that holds like a special place in your heart. So I'm just curious, like, what your first kind of experience with it was like.
I don't remember exactly how old I was. I just remember I was I was a kid when I saw this. So this was a movie my brother and I would watch a lot. He showed it to me. So I think I was probably I was definitely in middle school. I might have been 10 years old when I first saw this. And so this was always a movie that I loved watching. Loved watching with him. We quoted it all the time. And I didn't, because I was not. Oh no, you know what? I was probably 11 because I was 9 when this came out. So I definitely didn't see it in theaters or anything. So we might have rented it. I can't really remember, but I know I was in middle school. It was weird. I didn't see Hot Fuzz though until I was older, in high school. But we'll talk more about that when we get to the movie. But yeah, so Shaun of the Dead was just the one of the comedies. I mean, I watched a lot of comedy movies. That was my main genre as a kid, obviously. But I also liked horror movies a lot. So I don't know, this was just always a fun one to watch. So early on, but it was so interesting as I got older. The more I watched it, obviously I'm not going to pick things up when I'm a kid. I'm going to pick up the baseline comedy that's kind of up front. And there is just so much to dig deep in this movie within like the script, with how it's written, what's shown. Like it's a lot of fun to just. I still pick up things. I don't know about you. I still like find a lot of shit in this movie.
That was what I kind of really enjoyed about rewatching these films for the podcast, is just picking up on all the little stuff and being, because you're looking for stuff to talk about, and just picking up on little things that like, wow, I've seen these movies like dozens of times, and I'm just now catching little jokes that you miss, or kind of like minor little details. So that was really cool to just, experience these again in that kind of light. That's a cool, I'm jealous that you got to see this movie when you were young. I think I got to it around, 14, 15. So I was like a little bit older than you were, and I really liked it and I really enjoyed it. I don't want to say that I loved it, because at the time I was like, oh, this is just like a really good little zombie comedy. It doesn't, and I think at the time, like, I just wasn't as into film or filmmaking, and so I kind of put it in, and this paints me in a bad light, but I kind of put it on like the same pedestal as like what is that, Zombieland.
Okay.
Like, to me, Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead were very similar. I was like, oh, they're just like fun little zombie comedies. And then I think it was around 16 or 17, and that's when I had really got into film and started looking into like filmmaking and like what makes a film great, from not just a writing standpoint, but like the editing and cinematography, direction, and all that stuff. And there used to be this YouTube channel, and I think they shut down, and I believe it was called Every Frame a Painting Who Did It. I think that was the channel. And they made a whole video on Edgar Wright, and I forget the name of it, but it was all about how Edgar Wright uses transitions in his movies. And that just painted Shaun of the Dead and all of his movies, but obviously we're kind of stuck on Shaun right now, but just how he used editing and transitions, not only for storytelling purposes, but for like really great comedic effect. And then rewatching Shaun and picking up on all those little things where it's like, oh my gosh, the match cuts and the kind of, I don't know what you would call that, but where you start on one shot and then you pan over quickly, and that's how you start the next shot, and like a whip pan.
Yeah, whip pan. But I don't know if is it called something else, or is that's what it is, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's another name for that specific transition. I guess it is. No, it's not even a match cut, because a match cut is just matching the shot. No, I don't know. I got the whip pan transition, whatever you call it. Just those little moments where it's like, oh, like he's not someone he's not a Judd Apatow, where all the jokes come from the script. In Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, a lot of the jokes are done just through visuals, sometimes in a slapstick way, but again, also just using editing, transitions, and whatnot to tell jokes, which it just paints these films in such a positive light, because you're like, there's so much to chew on. Like you said, like you brought up the script and like the filmmaking, and again, all around, Shaun of the Dead is just a really well done movie. But yeah, let's get into the plot a little bit more. As Josh said, the setup is that Shaun is kind of this slacker. He doesn't really take life too seriously. He's kind of fucking up his relationship with his girlfriend. And a lot of that comes down to him being too easy on his friend Ed, played by Nick Frost, who is living with Shaun and his roommate, but not paying rent. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't really do anything around the house. There's a funny little bit where they ask him to clean up, and he does. And then Shaun comes back, and Ed is like, aren't you going to thank me for cleaning up? And Shaun goes, it doesn't really look like you cleaned up. And Ed goes, well, yeah, I had a couple beers after.
just redoes the mess to celebrate.
But you know what sucks is I do that. I'll spend like an hour on like a Saturday morning cleaning up and like, wiping off the countertops and doing all the dishes and vacuuming and using my Swiffer, and then cut to 8-9 hours later, and I have fast food wrappers out on the table, and I tracked in mud from outside, and so it's very relatable. I relate to Ed. But yeah, and that's sort of the kind of starting off point, and then obviously you have all that interpersonal drama. Then you throw in a zombie apocalypse. And one thing that I love about this movie that I think kind of elevates it above a lot of other zombie movies, not just zombie comedies, is it's one of the only ones where they actually use the word zombie. And even to a point where Ed starts calling them zombies, and Sean is like, "No, don't say that. Don't use the Z word," which in I guess Britain they say Z instead of Z. But yeah, I mean that kind of kicks off the plot, and
I didn't realize that. Is that like I didn't realize people don't say zombies in like most zombie movies.
Mm-hmm. Like you think of movies like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead,
yeah,
and a lot of like mainstream zombie films, they just don't say the word zombie. It's like usually even in like The Walking Dead, they never once say the word zombie. They have different words like walkers or geeks, or they have like a bunch of different names.
So that's why he gets all like like almost superstitious about it. He's like,
yeah. No, it's cool. It's like it's a zombie film in a world where people have seen zombie movies, you know, and I kind of like that. But one thing I want to really highlight about this movie that I think is very prominent in all three of them, but obviously kind of starts with Shaun of the Dead, and it's just how much setup and payoff there is with the jokes and the plot and the writing. And I obviously want to hear what you have to say about it, but to kind of kick things off, one thing that a lot of people love to point out, every person who's looked into the trivia for this movie has kind of seen or knows about, and it's that at the beginning of the movie, or towards the beginning, at least first act, before the zombie apocalypse really kicks off, and it's after, because we didn't really say, but Sean kind of fucks up things even worse with his girlfriend. It starts off with them having issues and drama, and then he's supposed to take her out to this nice dinner. And this is one little fun fact that I found too. You know how in the script or in the film he says, "I'll take you to that place where they do the fish."
Yeah.
The actual name of the restaurant, when you look it up, like when he looks into the phone book to call them to try to make the reservation, it's called Fulci's, the place that does the fish, which is funny for two reasons. Because A, that's literally what he said, and B, Fulci, little zombie reference. For those who don't know, the original film, I forget, it was Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead had an unofficial Italian sequel called Zombie 2, which was directed by a director named Fulci. So nice little zombie reference, kind of throwback to that.
Yeah, I did not know that.
But yeah, he makes the reservation too late. Liz essentially breaks up with him, and he goes out drinking with Ed, and he talks about their plan for the next day. And their plan, when you break down what Ed says, is essentially the plot of the movie, which I think is just super cool. It's such a clever way to foreshadow things, but without being too obvious, because it's all sort of like, it's not double entendres. That's not the right phrase. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's not direct.
Yeah. So it's, first off, spoilers ahead if you're still listening, because now we're gonna go into like shoot
spoiler for all three of the movies, guys. We forgot to say that at the beginning, but if you don't know, like we said, we're going to talk about the plots in full detail. So spoilers for all three Cornetto movies.
So yeah,
this is your first and only warning.
This is a great note that Jake is making. I have a separate section in my Sean notes, just titled callbacks, and there's too many to I can't list them all because I'll be here all day, because that's how good Edgar Wright is at like just paying attention to like making sure there isn't one line of dialogue that's wasted. There's like, it's like everything that's said will come back later at some point. So yeah, Ed's trying to make Sean feel better at the pub here, and he's telling them what they're going to do tomorrow. And he says that they're going to start their day with a Bloody Mary, which is just a normal drink. But they quite literally run into their first zombie encounter, whose name is Mary. We see her in the opening credits. You know, she's a cashier. They kill her, so Bloody Mary. It's just like little things like that. And then what he says, bite at the king's head. His stepdad Philip gets bit in the head. This one I actually never realized what he said. He says couple at the Little Princess. I think is that like a bar?
No, so the couple, Diane and
but
what's his name, and then the princess is the girlfriend,
Liz. But what does he actually mean? Like, is the Little Princess, like, is he talking about like we're gonna go to the?
No, they're saying so they're gonna have the Bloody Mary, then they're gonna have a couple. When he says couple at the the Little Princess?
Yeah.
Right after that, they go to get Liz and Diane.
But he's not talking about doing that. He's just talking about them just hanging out. Like,
No, yeah, but that's what it's referencing in like the foreshadowing is that after they
Yeah.
have the Bloody Mary, they're gonna go meet up. They're gonna have a couple at the Little Princess, which I assume Little Princess is a bar.
yeah, that's what I was saying. Is little.
Oh, okay, yeah. I assume it's like a pub. But yeah, nice little kind of reference.
And then he
there,
says we're gonna stagger back here to the Winchester, which is when they like kind of like march through the zombies and kind of like act like zombies to get past them. And he says back at the bar for shots, which is when the shootout happens. So it's just really nice stuff. It's all very normalized dialogue that you would never think when he's saying it. Oh, they're just foreshadowing. No, like it's so subtle and it's just so like everything is just so embedded, which is I don't know, just it layers this movie and script so well.
Doing that in like a very subtle way too. Like we said, it's like not direct, but then you rewatch it and you're like, oh, like literally he lays out the plot of the movie.
And you're not even going to get, you're like on the first watch, even when you see it play out, I didn't catch that until like, I don't even know how many watches in. Like, it's just, I don't know. That's what makes it so great that it's just, you can revisit this so many times and always get something out of it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I don't even think I knew it until someone pointed it out to me or
oh yeah, I didn't figure
it might have been you. You might have told me.
And let me set the record straight. I didn't find this shit out by myself. I'm not that like I don't know. I definitely read that and then shared it. Maybe at the time I pawned it off as my own discovery.
No, it's just whoever was able. I don't know if like Edgar Wright or Simon Pegg had to like come out and say that in an interview or something, or if someone just naturally picked it up. But good on them if they did.
So I watched the commentary for all three of these movies. So like I'm like flooded with like fun facts that like I'll share some, but like it's gonna really tack on time if I just share everything. But they do talk about that when that's happening. I mean, a lot of the commentaries though throughout the movie is just them talking about their like unlimited admiration for every single person they work with. They absolutely love their cast members and crew, which is just like really like it's just nice to like hear them how they talk about their co-workers and stuff like that.
Did you see at all where they got most of their zombie extras?
No.
So most of the zombie extras were just huge Edgar Wright / Spaced fans.
Okay.
And Edgar Wright was able to get in touch with them because he went on the Spaced fan page, or it was like a space fan page, or like where a bunch of like obviously space fans gathered online, and it was just like this little online community. So obviously early days of the internet, to like 2004, 2003, they probably filmed in, and another fun little kind of reference to another zombie movie. Each of the zombies were paid £1, which is a reference to Dawn of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, where all of the people in that were paid $1 a donut and like a shirt, like a Dawn of the Dead shirt. So a little kind of callback to George A. Romero, the godfather of zombies, which is cool. There's a lot of like of those little references.
Yeah, but. And they definitely have Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead references in this. They have a lot of like, nods to a lot of different like horror innovators and stuff like that. There's a lot of music used from Dawn of the Dead. There's quotes from Night of the Living Dead that's thrown in here, which I think they talked to George Romero about like when he watched it, and they were like, "Oh, did you catch our Night of the Living Dead reference?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Oh no!" When he says, "We're coming to get you, Barbara," and he's like, "Oh yeah, forgot. I didn't catch that." So
I did read that George A. Romero apparently really loved it though. Like when he was shown the movie, he just absolutely adored it and was a big fan of it, which is cool. It would have sucked if he'd been like, oh yeah, George A. Romero absolutely fucking hates.
Oh,
this
that would
movie.
be such a dagger.
It was cool too. I had seen that apparently they were asked, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, they were asked why the zombies don't run in this, because early zombies, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even a little bit 90s, zombies were typically very slow. And then you had films like, I know they're not technically zombies, but whatever, it's still a zombie movie. 28 Days Later, you had, zombies that run, and that kind of became the trend. And I guess they had been asked that, and Simon Pegg's response was, being undead should not be an energizer.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be fast when you're undead.
I don't even know like how many zombie movies where they run. Like maybe like the Dawn of the Dead remake, I guess Zombieland they definitely run.
It was interesting too. Apparently the studios had some conflict, and cuz Dawn of the Dead, the remake, also came out in 2004.
Yeah.
And I guess these films were about to release on like the same weekend, and then Shaun of the Dead delayed its release by 2 weeks as to not conflict with the Dawn of the Dead remake, which Shaun of the Dead is like 1,000 times better than that shitty Zack Snyder remake. I know people who even hate Zack Snyder who are like, oh, well, Dawn of the Dead is good. It's not. It's not. It's a bad movie, and it's a way, way worse version of the 78 film in every regard.
It is heartbreaking to see the box office comparison, though.
You know, whatever, because it's just, a box office is such a bad estimate or judgment of a film's quality, and that's evident by the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time.
Oh, so Dawn of the Dead released in March, Shaun of the Dead released in September. But yeah, the gross...
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I had read that they were like 2 weeks apart.
No, this says March 19th, 2004, and Shaun of the Dead says like September 24th, I think.
Oh. Well, my bad.
Wait.
I guess I didn't do a good job diving deep there.
No, I lied.
Yeah.
I lied. No, Jake is right. On Wikipedia, it says 29th of March. See, you can't... Oh, my God. IMDb just got it all wrong.
They have lost so many steps. They are just not even... They are getting outclassed by like Letterboxd and shit.
Oh,
everybody
okay.
hates IMDb.
It released in the... It says on IMDb it released in the UK in March.
Oh.
So I guess in the US it released in September, maybe.
That's actually funny because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the hosts on that is a British guy, and he was talking about how, like, years ago, British people would get films earlier than the U.S., and now it's completely the opposite. Like, films come out like 3 weeks to a month, maybe sometimes 2 months in the UK after they've been released in the USA. So
wow, I mean, this was 6 months to the US after the UK release.
Yeah,
but yeah, 100 million that Dawn of the Dead grossed. Versus the
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I just whatever. The movie's dumb. That movie's dumb, and it does what Zack Snyder always does. He takes something, he remakes or adapts something, and he completely fundamentally misunderstands what the thematic relevance of the subject is. Dawn of the Dead, the remake, removes all of the commentary on capitalism and consumerism that the original had, and it's just a dumb generic zombie.
If I remember correctly, I thought it looked kind of ugly. If I remember,
it looks hideous.
Yeah.
It's got that like early 2000s like orange brownish color grade to everything, where everything looks like their skin looks like orange at times.
It's very. I feel like I remember it being very contrasty. I can't remember though.
It's like overly contrasty, like not in a good way.
But that's on par for, I think, Zack Snyder. I think he's very But we're not here to talk about Dawn of the Dead remake.
No,
we're here to talk about the goods.
back to Shaun of the Dead. One thing that we didn't really talk about, we kind of talked about how Ed covers the entire plot in his little feel better speech to Shaun. But one of the other, not one of the other, but many of the other kind of setup and payoff moments that are littered throughout the film that I just love, and one of them being. So Sean's roommate, I forget the actor's name. I think his name in the movie is Pete.
I think his name is Pete too, or Peter.
In real life?
Yeah, Peter. His last name his last name is the alphabet.
Yeah. But so Sean and Ed kind of stumble back to the apartment after they're super drunk, and we didn't talk about that one little funny scene, but it always makes me laugh, and it's when they stumble out of the bar and they're like singing a song.
Yeah.
And they pass an alleyway, and in the alleyway there's a zombie. Obviously they're drunk and they don't know about the apocalypse yet, but they're singing and they go and then the zombie goes and like it like is in sync with them. It's just
they just keep
but they stumble back to the apartment, and they're blaring music at like 4 a.m. and Pete comes in and he mentions getting bit on the way home, which is a nice little kind of setup moment, but he yells at them, and there's two really great setup and payoffs in this scene alone in like very close tandem to each other. And it's first off, three, because he gets bit. Obviously he turns into a zombie the next day. But what he does is he grabs the record that Ed and Sean are listening to, and he throws it out the window, which alludes to the next day. That's how they start trying to kill the zombies, is they start throwing the records, Sean's old records, at the zombies. So there's one kind of setup. And then the other one is before or after Pete leaves the scene, Ed goes, "Next time I see him, he's dead."
Yeah.
And then the next time they see him, he's dead.
Well, there's another big one. When when Pete says to Ed, "You want to live like an animal? Go live in the shed, you thick fuck."
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah,
which is right at the very end.
Yeah, he ends up. That's such a great little. Again, just so much attention to detail in the script, and like you feel like every line of dialogue leads to something.
Yeah.
It feels like none of it is wasted. It all just plays into
Do
something.
you have a favorite callback moment? Something that's in the beginning that they refer back to in a different way? Because I have two, but I probably have one main one, but I have two I want to say.
Ooh, oh, that's a tough question. You're putting me on the spot here. If you want to tell yours, it'll give me some time to think.
I have probably my number one, but I'm just gonna talk about the other one. Is when Ed is playing his video game, and Sean is like leaning over to him, and he says, "Oh, top left," and then he says, "Reload, I'm on it." Well, Ed says, "I'm on it," and then he like shoots the guy, and he says, "Nice shot." And that exact sentences happen just reversed when Sean is now shooting the real life zombies, and Ed tells him top left, and then he tells him to reload, and Sean says, "I'm on it," and then he shoots the guy in the head, and he says, "Nice shot." It's just a really nice, like, just there's a lot of just recontextualizing these lines, and that's what I love so much about it, which brings me to probably the best one in my eyes is the fart joke. Now, you could make a fart joke just be so like bland and tasteless, and somehow Edgar Wright turns it into like something that carries so much weight.
Like a really emotional moment.
Yeah, it's such a great moment, and it just completely changes just how the characters interact with that one like that one moment. So, in that same scene, I think when Ed's playing a video game, Sean just asks him to do something for him because of like Pete, and then he like walks away. He's going to work, and Ed apologizes. He says, "I'm sorry, Sean," and he says, "It's all right." And he said, no, I'm sorry. And then he just looks at him, and Sean's looking at him, and it like puzzled, and then he just like realized that he fucking smells that he farted. And it's like the same exact delivery, well, same exact lines, not different delivery. And when Ed gets bitten and he's like saying bye to his friend, even to the very like point that he's leaving for work, so he's leaving Ed just to go to work. It's very light, it means nothing. And then he's leaving Ed in the basement, and he does like the fart joke where he just like, you know, he has that moment of humor that just like sets up how Ed is, and then it just brings back to just create like such an emotional part between the two. Just really good stuff.
I think I gotta go. It's a little cliche, but it's probably one of the most quoted lines in the movie. But you find out that Sean works at, is it like an electronics store? It seems like.
Yeah.
Some sort of like electronics store, appliances, and one of his coworkers, who actually goes on to be in Hot Fuzz, and also kind of became, I don't want to say a huge actor, but he became like a pretty decent, like I've seen him in a lot of stuff.
He's in The World's End too.
I forget. World's End. Where's he in The World's End?
It's when he's looking at the home from Oliver. He's in one scene.
Yes, you're right. I totally forgot about that little moment. I think his name is like Rafi or something of that sort. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. But Sean is giving this lecture, and before I mention the setup and payoff that I really like, I'm sure you know where I'm going with it. But I love when he's having this interaction, because the guy, he's having this like, he just has this look on his face, like he like the most like I don't give a shit look, and you know, Sean's trying to give this speech to the coworkers because I guess their manager is out and Sean's in charge now, and the kid, he's 17, he takes a call, and Sean's trying to reason with him, and he's like, look, I got things that I want to do in my life too, and in the most dry but like mean way, the young kid goes, when? And it's just, again, like the way it's edited and the delivery is just so spot on and perfect, like a lot of the jokes in this movie. But no, it's the "You've got red on you." So Sean has a red pen in his pocket, obviously, and it starts leaking, and that's how that scene kind of ends with the young kid, where, you know, before Bill Nye, Sean's stepdad, enters the scene, but he just says, "You got red on you." And you're like, you don't think anything of it. And then later on in the film, obviously, you know, blood, zombies, whatnot. He gets blood on him, and then the same joke comes back into play. "You've got red on you." It's so simple, but like so many of the jokes and moments in this film that are set up and pay off, you don't see it coming back into play at all. And then it just does. And it always does so in a way where it's like not calling attention to itself. it never feels like it's overbearing or too in your face. You know, not all the jokes and setup and stuff are as subtle as Ed kind of laying out the entire plot of the film, where it's like, oh, you gotta, either someone tells you or you really gotta like pay attention on rewatches and be like, oh, holy shit. But either way, it's just, again, Edgar Wright, he just so effortlessly is able to just put things, little minor things, and just sprinkle them in the first act, and then boom, later on, like the fart. It's just the fact that the fart joke comes back into play in the way that it does is just next level brilliant comedy writing.
Who Barbara then says it. There's a fourth one that says you got red on you, right? I think he just has a little blood on his face, and she says you got red on you, and tries to wipe it off when he goes to visit his mom. But then it comes back.
Is that not the callback?
No, it is. But I thought it was called back twice. It might not. I think Ed says it on his shirt.
Oh,
I think
can I talk about probably the funniest Ed moment in the movie?
Oh, lay it on me. I'll let you compose yourself.
Maybe it hasn't aged the best. But it's when Ed drops the N-word.
It's so it comes out of, you would never expect it.
It's so out of left field. You're just like, oh.
They did talk about that in the commentary, and I think they had other lines that they wanted to say. And I don't know if they said that those weren't allowed. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if in the UK, if it's like, I don't know if there's like worse things, or I have no idea. But even his shirt, they went through like a few shirts for Ed's shirt, and they landed on the I Got Wood one, which I think Edgar Wright's brother designed for them.
Oh, that's cool.
One of the original shirts was I Love Pussy, and they were like nah, it's too like, you know, they're like I Got Wood better. It's a little bit more less in your face.
Yeah, and I do it works with this character. One thing I just want to kind of talk about too, and we didn't really highlight it too much because we've really just been talking about the writing, but I kind of mentioned like how visual comedy with Edgar Wright works, and it's so great in this movie too. Take the opening scene, for example, where it's just Liz and Sean talking about their relationship, and initially it's framed in these kind of singles, like these single shots, medium close-up of Liz and Sean just going back and forth, until she brings up that a big issue in their relationship is Ed, Sean's friend. And then it pans over to reveal that Ed's been there the entire time. And then it cuts back to Sean, and Sean goes into it, and he's like talking about how her friends are are an issue in their relationship. And then it pans over to reveal that Diane, why can't I remember the guy's name?
David.
Diane and David are in the scene too.
And they both have the same exact line. It's not that I don't like them. And then they just turn to him, it's not that I don't like you. And But even the framing is just is so good, because like every time they're brought in where Sean and Liz are on the outside, and they're like right in between them. So like there's just such careful direction here. I think when it first shows Liz, you see the a reoccurring zombie, the old lady that's always at the bar. She's behind Liz as she's like saying she doesn't want to, you know, get stuck in her life, you know, always coming back here, and right behind her is kind of like what she's referring to. Like, I don't want to be like, you know, not that she like looks over at her, but it's just like there's always background stuff happening, and that's what's so good about these movies too, is that there is, as we talked about, there's no wasted lines, there's no wasted space in these frames. It's just filled with like something you can dig into. I wanted to talk about.
I really think it's.
No, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I posted this on Instagram Threads the other day, and it, you know, garnered a lot of kind of attention. Just rewatching this movie again, like just really looking at it for things to talk about, and I was just so impressed with how tight knit this script is. Like, I think it's got to be one of the tightest written comedy scripts in the last, you know, 20-25 years in terms of all of comedy films. It is just, like we said, no second is wasted, no line is wasted. Everything either comes back into play at some point or another, or is just really funny in its own right, or sets up something, or develops a character in some sort of way. But yeah, continue.
I wanted to just bounce ideas off you, because I don't really know. This I did, like when I was watching like even like commentary or like videos, just kind of like showing background stuff that I might not have noticed. In that opening scene, I wanted to talk about the color blue in wardrobe, blues and greens, because David and Liz are dressed in blue a lot. David's dressed in blue and green. It's mostly blue, but his final wardrobe is blue and green. But so in that scene, he's wearing a leather jacket and a blue shirt, and behind him you see two guys. One of them is wearing a brown jacket, and the other one's wearing a blue shirt. And I think that's just kind of like playing on like he's just very like he blends in with everybody else, and that's kind of like what they kind of they tackle these themes of where they use this world of the zombie apocalypse to kind of aid into their storytelling. It's not just like a fun backdrop. It does have weight to Sean's character and what he's trying to move away from. And I think like, you know, what they try to say, I mean, after you watch it a bunch, it becomes like obvious, like especially in the opening credits, these normal people, they're already zombified pretty much. And this is kind of like the direction that Sean is heading in if he kind of continues on that path of like Ed's spectrum, whereas like his two roommates are kind of like the devil and angel on his shoulder, you know, but in extremes. But what I want to talk about, like, what do you think? Blue, like Liz is in blue, but I noticed Liz and Diane, they're in blue and green, which is Diane is Liz's friend, and at the end, David is in blue and green. I don't know if that's just saying like he's just kind of like he's dating Diane, but he loves Liz. He's kind of like just like he's there to just be kind of like representative of both of them. I don't know if that's why they did it, but I was like, I wonder why though. It seems like Diane's in these like earthy tones, these greens, these kind of like natural shades, and Liz is in blues, which I noticed like zombies are in blue a lot. In this.
So hold on, remind me of what David's wardrobe is.
His final one is the striped shirt. It's blue and green.
I guess I really never kind of noticed what the other characters were wearing. Obviously the red in the movie is like super obvious, but I guess from a wardrobe perspective, I never looked into more thematic meanings behind it. But I guess maybe if it's like a blue and green kind of stripe thing, it just means like his love and attention is divided between Diane and Liz, which not in the same vein, but I just wanted to bring it up real quick because it's one of the moments that really never hit me emotionally until this watch. Ooh. But it's when Diane, it's when it's revealed in the bar at the end. It's obvious throughout the movie, but when it's spoken out loud, it's kind of referenced earlier when Sean goes to get them, but he says, well, why don't you marry her if you love her so much, in reference to Liz. And David has this kind of... David and Diane in that scene have like a really kind of odd reaction because it seems like Diane knows, and David's like, well, what do you mean? Like, it like feels like he's accused of something or he's guilty. And then later at the end, Diane out loud says it. She's like, listen, I know that you only dated me in college to get close to Liz. Like, I've accepted it. I've come to terms with it. Why can't you? And I just remember watching it this time around and like it breaking my heart a little bit because I was like, that is so like just sad and upsetting that like that's the best that you looked for in life. Like you settled for a guy that you know is in love with your best friend, and you're just fine with that. And it really kind of hit me because I was like, again, it's something that I've always toyed with, but like in my mind that so many people are so afraid of being alone that they do settle for someone who is just not in love with them or not right for them in one way or another. But yeah, it just kind of caught me off guard. I didn't want to go throughout with talk without bringing that up. But
no, so I feel like what you and I have talked about this trilogy so many times, and we have always had, did we say in the beginning what we liked the best? I don't think we did. Maybe I should.
No, we said before.
We did?
We said before we started recording, we each said like what our favorites were. But.
So like, and that's like never changed. Now throughout this trilogy, I've had like both other films come very close. Like I've had an up and down relationship with this trilogy, but Sean has always kind of like stayed there as like my favorite. And I think what always got me that I would tell Jake is that this one hits the emotional beats for me just much more. World's End kind of gets there throughout it, and like it has its heights, but I think because I think Simon Pegg is just like, he's great in all of them, but I think this is his highlight in terms of acting. And I don't know that it's so close, but his scenes where it's like a turning point for his character with Phil and his mom, I can't watch this movie and watch him kind of like have his final moments with his mom and not get teary eyed. Like I have to like hold it in sometimes depending on like where I'm watching this because I don't want to be crying all the time. But like this movie gets me to that point more than either of the other movies, and I think that's my big thing with this movie is that it just tackles so much drama. Blended it so well with these other genres. I don't know how you weigh them and balance them so well, but the fact that I can just like have all these different emotions in the same scene probably too is just crazy to me.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. And I know when we've argued about which of these is the best in the past, that is sort of your kind of go-to tentpole argument is that this one hits the emotional beats better than the other two. I don't agree, and I don't want to lend my hand too much, and I don't think it does. I think World's End hits the emotional beats the best, and I'll explain my thought process when we get to that film at the end of the episode. But no, you're absolutely right, and this is... We were in such agreement up until this point, but one of my criticisms of this movie...
Oh, don't say it. Don't say it.
No. It's not terrible, but it's something I noted. The scene with his mom, amazing. Love it. It's heartbreaking. Simon Pegg is phenomenal in that scene. There's not only a lot of just drama and emotion, but there's also some tension with David in that scene, because that's when David starts to try to take things into his own hands. And I really do. For just in the scene itself, I love the scene with Sean and his stepdad in the car. When you realize, you already know from the beginning, because when Sean calls his mom to see if she's okay once the apocalypse is happening, she says that Philip got bitten, so you already know that Philip is going to die. But it's in the car, and Philip and Sean have this just really, really well-written, extremely well-acted, emotional scene, and it does hit me in the feels. I'm not going to say it doesn't. My issue with it, and it's so tough because what I love so much about this script and this film is it's really get in, get out. It's like an hour 40, hour 45 without credits. It's super short. It is so well-paced. It's so snappy, but also doesn't skimp out on those emotional beats. However, I think if the Philip scene happens a little bit later in the movie, and you get a little bit more development between Sean and Philip, I think that scene works a little bit better. It's not a massive critique, but I also don't think it's a nitpick either. I just think Sean and Philip's relationship is a little bit underdeveloped in the movie to where I think that emotional scene could have just hit a lot harder had it come a little bit later.
Yeah. But you also don't want to take anything away from Barbara, because like he's not supposed to have like that big of a highlighted scene. You know, like I don't know when you would do that moment. I feel like, because even in that scene, you mix in his like frustration is constantly building with Ed, which is a huge part for his like his character is like that struggle.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how you build that tension in like that tight space. I mean, maybe you still have that scene. Maybe you do stuff beforehand where you can like kind of get a glimpse into their relationship. But like, what do? Like, you don't have anything to like build off of because they don't have that.
I think you can keep the same script, but have Philip turn maybe right before they get into the Winchester. I think if you place it just a couple of scenes
now, is it
later,
to build? Is it to build moments with them, like interaction moments?
Yeah.
What do you do there?
That's what I think. I
don't
know. Maybe throughout the course of the next couple of scenes, like Philip starts to really see Sean in a better light.
Yeah.
Because it's clear they have a lot of animosity between the two. They're not a big fan of each other, which has a hilarious scene when Sean initially goes to pick them up.
Yeah.
And he clearly doesn't like Philip, and he talks to his mom, and she's getting more and more frustrated with him. And Sean says that Philip touched him when he was younger, and then immediately is like, "That wasn't true. I'm sorry, I said that." And it's just a little funny moment, but
yeah, that's
one of my small criticisms in the movie. I just think that relationship could have been developed just a little bit more, given us a little bit more with them.
So when I was watching commentary, I think because they love Bill Nye so much, Is it Bill Nye or Bill Nye? Like, are you supposed to say the Y?
I don't
Me neither.
know.
When they were saying it, they were saying like,
I do a blend between the two. I do like a soft E at the
Bill
end.
Nye.
It's like Bill Nye.
Yeah, yeah. Because it sounded like they were just saying Bill Nye in the commentary, but they love him. They obviously they love everyone, but
The problem is there's already a Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I know. That's why you got to put the extra E at the end a little bit.
Naive.
But when that scene was happening, they were kind of talking about it, and they were like, saying how like good it is and stuff like that, and they were like, I think they just wanted to work with him more. They wanted to see him act more. So they're like, I don't know if I'm like disappointed that like his journey kind of ends here. Like, I don't know if we should have had him in more just because he's like so good. But it wasn't really about like the emotional depth of the scene. It was just about like having him in.
No. I call bullshit on that because they did him even dirtier in Hot Fuzz because he's only in 2 scenes in that.
But so like my thing is that's fair. If that's what like kind of feels like it works better for you if they did it differently. For me, I think if you try to do too much, you kind of get a little cheesy. And I don't think that they've had like what 20 plus years of this animosity between them. It would feel out of place to like start like building the relationship just to have them die. It would feel like you're trying to create a relationship to make me care. Whereas I like that this is out of nowhere. Not because it like it makes me feel it more, but because it's just enough of a blow to make me kind of like get put in Sean's head like, oh wow, I just realized this guy was actually like a good guy and now I just lost him. It's very abrupt. I think it makes it more real for me, and I think you save that for Barbara to have that real big emotional hit.
It really breaks my heart in that scene when he is gone, and it's when Sean tries to tell his mom, and he's like, Philip's gone, Mom, and she just has like a very real reaction where she's like, what do you, no he's not,
which is kind of funny. It's like it's like I don't know.
It is, but it's such like a
it's like a heartbreaking scene because Sean, but when she just turns around and she says, no, he isn't. I don't know. That just makes me chuckle.
It is a little funny, but it does hurt me. Now, the real funny part, and I know that you think this is probably one of the funniest moments in the movie because you've highlighted this to me before. It's Sean's reaction.
It's so fucking funny.
Philip turns into a zombie.
It's so fucking. When I was little, that part cracked me up. Like it's like top 10 scenes in the movie that just made me laugh. And he just shouts Jesus when he like lunges at him.
You know what? My favorite moment, the one that I think is the funniest, it's an Ed moment, and it's such a small moment, but it's so they try to get into the Winchester, and they're right outside the Winchester, surrounded by a fuck ton of zombies. And this is when they pretend to be zombies to try to get in, blend in and everything. And you just hear a phone ring. And Ed takes a call.
Dude,
And he's talking to a friend as if you would any normal day. He's like, no, man, I'm outside a pub. I can't really talk right now. And Sean, who has been on Ed's side for most of this movie, finally just like snaps and like smacks the phone out of his hand. Freaks out on him, and then Liz tugs him and she's like, Sean turns around, all the zombies are just staring at them.
Now I do want to ask you, because I feel like this has always been a gripe of yours. Did you warm up to Ed?
What do you mean?
I always thought you hated Ed. I thought you always said like that's like my least favorite of Nick Frost's characters. I thought you didn't like Ed.
No.
Are you sure?
Are you mixing me up with someone else?
No.
Yeah, no, he's never been a problem for me.
Maybe I was talking about Ed in our argument, and you were like, I think Ed's like the worst of his characters in the trilogy.
I would probably still stand by that, but I still think Ed is fucking hilarious in this movie.
I thought you hated him.
No. Another great scene I love, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before the podcast, but it's when Sean and his crew are kind of walking through the backyards of like suburbs, and they run into Yvonne, who's a friend of Sean's, who you kind of see at the beginning of the movie a little bit, and her group of people that she's surviving the apocalypse with, and each person is like a carbon copy of the other from the other group. So like you get like an Ed type character instead of Sean has Liz, Yvonne has her boyfriend.
Did him dirty. Let me tell you that. Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
They did him dirty. I wish he was in it more.
Even
somehow.
more. Oh no, yeah. I guess they do him more dirty in this one than in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's only in 2 scenes in Hot Fuzz too. He gets the Bill Nye treatment.
He doesn't even have a line except hi in Sean.
I think that's actually hilarious though. But I was kind of looking up a lot of little kind of UK pairings in that group. Obviously Yvonne is from Spaced with Sean. Simon Pegg. I believe one of the other female characters who I don't know if she has a relationship with Nick Frost in Space. I haven't seen that show, but when I was kind of looking up stuff, Martin Freeman plays Jim in the British version of The Office, and Diane plays Pam in the British version of The Office. So that's cool. A little kind of connection there. A lot of little connecting threads, which I always enjoy. You get a joke in the film that would become a staple of the Cornetto Trilogy, and that's the fence joke where Sean tries to jump over the fence, and it's one that I don't know I think it's the funniest in Hot Fuzz, mainly because of Nick Frost, but oh my dude, yes.
Nah, Sean gets me every single time.
Dude. In Hot Fuzz, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, sorry, but because Simon Pegg in that movie, he clears like 4 fences with ease, and he's like backflipping over them and shit, and then Nick Frost gets excited and he trips into the fence and he falls in like one of the funniest ways I've seen in a movie. It's just he just stumbles into it. But back to Sean. I feel like we've covered a lot of the scenes in this movie.
Dude, I wish we could like somehow do an episode just on each of these movies, because there's so fucking much.
But so we've talked about a lot of the scenes in kind of the first and second act. I didn't mention it, but I love how Ed crashes their car so that they have to take Phil's car, the Jaguar. But yeah, let's kind of wrap things up with the third act, the final scene. So they get into the Winchester solely because Sean, he doesn't sacrifice himself, but he kind of takes off and leads the zombies away so that they can get into the Winchester, to which, Sean arrives later. And this is where you kind of find out that Barbara got bit when they were, walking through the backyards of the suburbs. And oh, wait, I want to talk about that scene really quick, but it's when they run into the zombie that you find out did bite Barbara, and they throw I think it's like a tether ball pole to Sean, and Sean tries to smack the zombie in the head with the tether ball part, with like the actual ball. And it pans over to Diane and Liz, who make like a stabbing gesture, and he goes, "Oh!" And then he
dude. The funny part to me is when they toss it to him, he like looks at it and he gets like excited. He's like, "Yes!" And he swings the ball, like he gives a couple swings. He just whacks him in the head. It's just like a bounce off.
One more scene too that I want to obviously highlight. It's one that we didn't talk about too much because it's been talked about to death with this movie. One of the funniest, most iconic scenes when they're throwing the records at the zombies. It's absolutely hilarious. Really great shot, by the way, when the character Mary, the Bloody Mary zombie, they push her onto a pole, and when she gets up, it's just a shot through the hole in her stomach, and you can see Ed and Sean through the hole, and it's just a really clever shot and really well done.
Well, so this
from
is
a framing perspective.
That's one of another scene that was like one of the funniest to me, like since I watched this movie.
It's so funny
when she gets up and Ed just like he has the disposable camera and he just winds it again to take another picture, and you just hear the of the clicking, which they obviously put that sound in. I heard a lot of stuff they put it in like post or ADR, because when they had that, like they couldn't really hear it, so they added that effect in there.
But I just love them, like the idea of them sifting through his records to find records that he doesn't care about. It's so funny.
I don't know if you listen to the Stone Roses. No. I'm a big fan of Stone Roses. I love that band, and their one album, I think it's Second Coming. I think when it came out, it wasn't like reviewed that well. Like people, I think people weren't like that big on it. So when he says that album, it's when Sean says, "I like it." Like that
You
just
resonate with that?
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's the first one that Sean's like, oh, I don't care, you could throw that one, is the Batman soundtrack.
Throw it.
I like, because the first one Ed throws, he's like, what was that? And Ed tells him, and I forget what it was, and he goes, man, that was an original pressing. And then, as a vinyl collector myself, I think that's
and
funny.
Then Ed just goes, oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, it's just great. And I love too, like right after that, they realize that throwing the vinyls is not working, because why would it? And
they're throwing the worst kitchen objects at their head when the guy says try to destroy the brain.
well, what I love is Sean's like, what about the shed? And Ed's like, isn't the shed locked? And it's an immediate not match cut, but harsh cut to inside the shed, and Sean just like busts through the door. But it's so good. But bringing things kind of to the end. So Sean goes into a different room in the bar, and this is after he's quote unquote given the slip to the zombies. And he looks outside, and there's just the biggest horde of zombies right outside. Walks over, and his reaction when he's trying to tell Liz is just like a mix of like confusion, stress. He's distraught, and she's like, I thought you gave him the slip. And he's like, yeah, about that. And one thing that I want to talk about in this is when the zombies start breaking through and characters start really dying. David dies, and when he's getting pulled apart by the zombies, it's visceral.
That shit looks good too.
It does. And it brings me to a bigger issue I have in Hot Fuzz. One minor critique, I guess. But in this movie, when they're getting pulled apart with the zombie bites and them just getting their limbs and skin ripped apart and their innards coming out and stuff, it looks really good for a film that's 21 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked, and not just from like how good it looked, but I was like, I just for some reason don't remember Shaun of the Dead being this visceral when it came to the gore. But I was just really impressed with that.
They have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, they do a really great job.
Did you catch this? So I always thought this. Only in that scene when he's getting pulled apart by the zombies, David's face, I think without the glasses, but that angle, he looks like John Cusack.
Oh,
I think
maybe a little bit. Yeah,
I think he looks just like him.
Maybe like a being John Malkovich, John Cusack.
I will say one thing that always bothers me in Shaun of the Dead. It's two things really. I kind of understand the second one a little bit more when they get out of the car from Philip. Just open the door, let him out. You've already experienced that you can like outrun these things. Take the car to the Winchester. I hate that they don't just let him out of the car and then just fucking like shove him and get in the car and drive.
Yeah, I guess that is like a kind of minor plot issue.
And then when Diane just opens the door after watching him get like, it's not like there's like ambiguity of if he's dead or not. You watch his limbs get pulled apart, and then she just opens the pub door. That shit pisses me off all the time.
Yeah, again, it's not a completely flawless, perfect movie.
But that's not even like
so many of its achievements. We didn't really talk about one of the other most iconic scenes is the "Don't Stop Me Now" scene.
That probably was always my number one funniest scene, and I can't believe I was gonna blow past it.
It's just so. Listen, I'm not gonna even say it's like the most creative, original thing. I think a lot of people have kind of said this, but like timing a scene out to music is not. I feel like myself included, like when I was younger, even before I had seen Shaun of the Dead, like thinking about like creating movie scenes and being like, oh, like I could match this scene to music. And obviously this would go on to inspire him to do a film like Baby Driver, which kind of takes that one scene and makes it like the focal point of the movie where all of those action scenes are timed really, really well to the music. But just, I love the scene and, them beating the, first off, it's just really well shot too. It's like this circular kind of 360 shot around them as they're beating the bartender guy to the tune of "Don't Stop Me Now." And then you get a really funny line with Simon Pegg where he's like, "David, kill the queen."
Yeah. Every single line that Sean says in that scene cracks me up. I don't know if it's just because of everything happening. I just think everything that he says is funny. I don't know if it's his delivery, but even when David doesn't know like how to turn off the jukebox, he's like says, "I can't find the switch," and Sean just like waves him to get the fuse to go to the fuses. I don't know why that makes me laugh. It just does. And the dart is fucking hilarious when he just gets nailed in the head and he just screams in such pain.
Again, though, like the entire movie, and it's so funny. They always throw the dumbest objects at the zombies. Like, what is, even if you hit the zombie, what is a dart gonna do?
But he gets so excited. She hits him in the head once, and he's like, yes, in the head. And then,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, that shit's good.
Yeah. There's just so much great stuff in that final kind of climax in that bar, from the queen to just the whole tension building with, Sean and David and, Sean's mom passing away. And again, David gets really aggressive with it. Like, yes, we all know she's going to turn into a zombie. I don't know why you want to shoot her now.
Yeah. It's because, like, nothing he says, it's not like it's not logical. We get it's logical. It's just so damn insensitive.
Bad timing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how long did it take for you to realize that David actually tries to shoot him? Because it took me like a little bit.
No, I think I caught that early on.
Like, I think probably like in high school when I watched it a lot, I realized it. But like when I was like my first few watches, I never realized he actually pulled the trigger. Mm-hmm. So
no, it's something. There's just so much great writing throughout the entire film. Whether it's like the setup and payoff or just even jokes that are just, a one-off are just so funny. Again, like when Nick Frost drops the N-word, it's just, it catches you so off guard and you're like, it's what? Excuse me?
Compared to the three, one thing I do want to just shine light on that I really do respect Sean for, more so than the others, is that I love a movie that's not afraid to kill off big characters or main characters. And they fucking do it like left and right in this one. They kind of like, they do it obviously in Hot Fuzz, but not to this level, and a little bit in World's End. But like Sean, I don't know. I think it just, again, it just hits those, like, I never feel like I'm like safe. I never feel like anybody's safe here. Like, even at the end, they really make you believe that this is like their like suicide kind of thing when they're in the basement of it. Mm-hmm. Like,
I think, and I'll get into why I'm fine with it in Hot Fuzz with the lack of character death, because I think it's like a part of it. It's like funny. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do appreciate it. One thing that you might find interesting is if you ask Edgar Wright, Diane is still alive.
Really?
Yeah, I want to read the exact trivia fact that I had stumbled upon, because I forget, there was like specific stuff in that film, or in that, what is it? So this is the full thing. I'll just read it word for word so I don't mess any of it up. Even though, according to the Zombometer feature stating that Diane dies, the DVD's animated special feature, Plot Holes, What Happened to Diane When She Left the Winchester, explains that Diane makes it through the crowd of zombies, climbs a tree, passes out, awakens to utter silence, and out of fear stays in the tree for days, surviving on David's severed leg, and eventually goes to live with an aunt. She remains in Christmas card contact with Sean and Liz.
Wow.
So,
I mean, hey, Sean made it through the crowd of zombies too, so I guess it's not.
Yeah, they're very slow, and they don't seem to be like those zombies that are like super strong. But one issue I do have, and again, I don't think it's a nitpick, and I get that it is one of the better setup and payoffs with Nick Frost's character in the film. I do feel like the ending is a little too squeaky clean. I understand that. I get, like, characters died and there is that emotional impact with Phil dying and, Nick Frost turning into a zombie and his mom dying, and nobody cares about David dying. That's fine. David's a piece of shit in the movie. But it does feel a little squeaky clean. Like, they're talking about killing themselves and it's about to end on a really rather dour note, and then they kind of get, saved at the end by Yvonne and this military conclave or whatever, and it just kind of ending with Sean and Liz being together and happy, and him still getting to spend time with Ed and play PS2 with him in the shed. It's funny. I'm not saying it's not. It is, played up for comedic, laughs and whatnot, but I just think it's a little too squeaky clean.
Maybe that's
if you catch my drift.
That's fair. Listen, it doesn't affect it for me.
It's not a major criticism, but
like, I think maybe that's why they put Sean through like the fucking most in terms of like losing people. Maybe they it's like, all right, let's reward him with something. I don't know. But it feels believable. It feels like, do you not like that it's like set up with like reality shows kind of like using the zombies for like entertainment.
That's
like it's
funny. I like
think,
that part.
I think if you didn't have that, it would feel out of place. But because you kind of give it that little setup, I think it's earned. I think it's deserved to kind of end. I don't know. It works. It works for me.
I don't hate it. It's just, it feels a little too squeaky clean, but it's not a major complaint. In this film, I really don't have any major issues with any of it. I didn't really highlight it, but I'm kind of out of my notes. But the one thing I do want to discuss quickly is just, we talked a little bit about the visuals and a lot about the editing, but one of the things that I really noticed this time around is just how kind of sneaky good the cinematography is. There's a really great tracking shot at the beginning of the film when Sean walks from his apartment over to the little shop to get a Diet Coke and a Cornetto. And then they do that again a couple scenes later. They do like the exact same tracking shot. Obviously now things are a little different. The zombie apocalypse has started, but just some really great framing choices. I highlighted the shot through the hole in Mary's stomach. Some really great tracking shots. A lot of the times, it's not overly edited. You know, he kind of has like a snappier editing style to his films, but this one, especially in comparison to something like Hot Fuzz, is a lot more reserved in how snappy the editing is and how quick the cuts are. But overall, man, I love so much about this film. I think it's one of the tightest scripts, like I said, in any comedy film in the last 2 to 3 decades. The performances from the entire cast are great. Really good emotional punches that kind of just catch you off guard, but still an absolutely hilarious movie. Great filmmaking, great direction, blocking, the cinematography, like I said, really, really good. Just all around, it's just a really, really well done comedy.
You stole my tracking note, so that was a big one for me. It's just like, there is such good blocking done with that. Like, just look at the background. Everyone is in their same position, except they're just zombies. They kind of go through the same motions of like what they're used to. Even the guy jogging, he's jogging by Sean, and then the next scene he's just like running for his life. I love that. Like the first day he gets a regular Coke, and then when he's like trying to like get his life back together, he picks up the Diet Coke just to like as an attempt. Even when he's like leaving the store, you see the owner of the store kind of like coming from the back. It's very creepy too. It's very creepy, but just like so attentive. When he's walking to his apartment, like the homeless guy is still like kind of like having his hand out. His dog is missing from the leash, and the guy that has the arm off, you see him down the sidewalk walking, and it's like and then like it's kind of like played out, kind of like they kind of time it well. I mean, they do go outside with Mary, and then they sit down on the couch, and then the guy like comes in from them leaving the door unlocked, which is again another callback from when Pete. That was like a big problem Pete had, that they always leave the door unlocked or open, and then it comes back to bite them in the ass. Like a zombie kind of comes in because they forgot to lock it. That, along with Don't Stop Me Now, that probably always cracked me up first watch, was when I don't know if like, because like when I watched it, I probably watched it on like a different aspect ratio where it wasn't like widescreen. Maybe, I don't know, because I don't always remember. And I heard Edgar Wright say this. He said if you're watching this on like a 4:3 aspect ratio or whatever, you're gonna miss that the door opening in the background or something like that.
Where would you have ever seen it in 4:3?
Not 4:3, but like I'm wondering, because like I don't remember that happening in the background. But like, you know how like, did you ever watch like a square TV? Like, it's not like, if it's like full screen, like full screen isn't when they have the full screen option.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, you probably watched the full screen. Were you one of those kids too? Like, I was always that way when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You always chose full screen.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see the whole thing, and then you realize, oh, it wasn't intended to be this way.
No, and I think I probably watched it full screen.
Okay.
So like,
I could see that being an option on like an early DVD version. Yeah.
So but when the zombies like just looming over them, and they look up, and Sean just like screams up to the ceiling and like flails his hands. Oh my god, that scene just gets me every single time.
Oh, his reactions is, and again, I think Simon Pegg really just proves his acting chops in this movie. He's giving really good comedic and dramatic performances like throughout the entire film. It's really, really impressive. Again, I haven't seen A Fistful of Fingers, but for this being even his second film, I think Edgar Wright did a masterful job with this. And I want to shout out the one asshole who came onto my post on Instagram Reels the other day, or I'm sorry, Instagram Threads, and was like, oh yeah, this is kind of a movie that like adolescents and high school kids kids like, and then they grow out of it when they mature. Motherfucker, this is still one of the best comedies of the last 30 years. Sit your ass down. Don't be a douche.
This movie actually felt like something I grew into as I got older. Like, I definitely...
It's gotten better with age.
Yeah.
It really has. And yeah, I mean, that really kind of covers all of my thoughts on the film. I'm kind of looking through my notes just to see if I had missed anything.
All my notes are pretty much covered. I'm going to be here like forever if I just go through every single word. There's so many small details that you could just talk about, and just like keeps adding to like why this film is so great.
One of the things we had brought up George A. Romero kind of earlier. I guess he enjoyed this movie so much that, and I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about him, but he gave I think it's Edgar Wright and Nick Frost cameos in Land of the Dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like he was just so impressed. I think I saw it once. Everything after Day of the Dead is not very good. It really trails off after that, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think that really covers a lot of my notes. I know one thing that was interesting is that when Edgar Wright was trying to make the film, I think the production studio like initially pulled out, and like so the film had no funding, to the point where Edgar Wright had to borrow money from a lot of friends and family to finish the film. And even to this day, Edgar Wright claims that Simon Pegg will not allow Edgar to pay him back for the money that Simon Pegg loaned him for the movie.
Oh, that's nice.
So I think that's just like a really cool little detail.
Yeah.
Like they really, and that's what I love about films like this, and just, you know, we talked about how great the cinematography and the visuals are, and just how well done, you know, a lot of the VFX and the gore and stuff is. This is not a very high budget movie. You said what, $6 million?
Yeah.
That's you know, a lot of people who don't pay attention to movie budgets, $6 million sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of cinema, that is a very, very, very small budget. And for what they were able to accomplish in this movie, it goes to show that talent will always supersede budget. There's plenty of examples throughout cinema of low budget films. This movie has way better cinematography than 95% of MCU movies, and those have $250 million budgets. It's not budget, it's talent. You can still do creative stuff with the camera and creative visual stuff and editing tricks to really separate yourself and have like your own visual identity. And that's kind of my final note on that.
My final note, because I know we're going to talk about it in Hot Fuzz, cameos. Didn't know this until this watch. Sean's mom is in this. Simon Pegg's mom. Didn't know she.
Oh, really?
Yeah, didn't know she made an appearance in this one too.
Yeah, I knew she was in Hot Fuzz. I didn't know she was in this.
She's in his store. It's like in the background. She's getting shown like something. It's very quick, but yeah, I didn't know she was in this, and I didn't know Edgar Wright's cameos in these movies. They're very, very like you don't even see his face.
Yeah, I think I
really.
knew that. Yeah,
he's on TV
one.
at the end when they're showing the zombies in the field. He's the one in the back that like falls down. So that's Edgar Wright in that. But yeah, so just a couple cameos that I learned this watch.
Yeah,
that are in
that's
there.
Cool. Yeah, last little note that I had was apparently the whole idea of, you know, kind of Sean and Ed being attached to the Winchester was inspired by Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in real life, who were apparently so attached to this one pub that Edgar Wright had a lot of difficulty getting them to go anywhere else to go out for a drink. So
oh, really?
That's kind of a little funny. The actual movie itself was, and let's see if I can remember the title. What the fuck was that movie called? So it was inspired by art from 1999, in which Tim, a character who is under the influence of amphetamines and Resident Evil 2, hallucinates that he's fighting off a zombie invasion. And so Edgar Wright kind of, you know, had that and was like, well, let's do a feature-length thing out of this. Like, so I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, that kind of covers all of my notes and trivia that I thought was interesting. The film was shot over 9 weeks. I remember kind of reading that up. So only took them, 9 weeks to film this entire thing. Again, super ambitious film from a lot of different angles. So
yeah, I'm pretty clear here. I'm ready to get into the classic flavor.
All right, let's get into the next film in the Cornetto Trilogy, Hot Fuzz. But before we do that, let's take a quick commercial break and we will be right back. All right, guys, thanks for holding on during that short commercial break. We do appreciate it. Moving on from that, we are obviously talking about Hot Fuzz, the second film in the Cornetto Trilogy, obviously again directed by Edgar Wright, starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, with a couple of cast members from Shaun of the Dead returning for this one, either in bigger roles or in sort of cameos, little bit parts. But this film was released 3 years after Shaun of the Dead, 2007. A little bit of double the budget, was made between 12 and 6 million and made 80 mil at the global box office. So they doubled the budget, but they made about $50 million more, which is really cool. I'm actually really surprised that Hot Fuzz did this well compared to Shaun. You'd think like zombie movies, zombie stuff was like really big in the early 2000s with like 28 Days Later. Obviously, we said the Dawn of the Dead remake made around 100 mil. So I'm really surprised that that this one made a lot more than Shaun of the Dead. But maybe a lot of people were just really big fans of Shaun of the Dead, and that was back in the days of video rental, so maybe people saw that and were just really excited for his next one. Not too sure, but like I said, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost return as the 2 stars of the film. I don't think Josh mentioned the Rotten Tomato score for Shaun of the Dead. I think it's like a 94.
I was gonna say, did you check? I was gonna have you guess.
Oh, yeah. I can guess I'm going to guess 94. That's my guess. 92% critical rating. And Hot Fuzz is very close to that. It stands at a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I don't know The World's End, so I can guess that one when we get to that movie. But yeah, let me read the IMDb synopsis, as I am known for going way too long when I describe the plot of a movie. But let's see what IMDb has to say. An overachieving London police sergeant is transferred to a village where the easygoing officers object to his all-fervor for regulations. Wait, hold on. An overachieving London police sergeant is transferred to a village where the easygoing officers object to his fervor for regulations, all while a string of grisly murders strikes the town. That's a nice little succinct one. Sorry I fucked up the reading. I don't have my glasses on right now. And my vision is just getting worse and worse. But yeah, so in this film, you have, again, like I said, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost returning, and they are playing... Simon Pegg specifically is playing a very different character in this film as opposed to his character in Shaun. And while, Nick Frost's character in this film is a little bit more in line with Ed in Shaun, they're still very different characters. And I really like that in each of these films, they all portray very different kinds of characters.
Yeah.
I think if you would have tried to do 3 different films with these 2 actors and they were too similar in personality and just characteristics, I think you wouldn't have as awesome of a trilogy as you have. But in this one, like we said, Simon Pegg plays this character, Sergeant Nicholas Angel, and he's this super, to the rules, following every rule in the book, overachieving, like the synopsis says, police sergeant. And literally the reason he gets transferred to a place in the countryside in this small little village is because he's too good of a police officer. I think at the beginning of the film, when he gets called into the sergeant's office, the sergeant is played by Martin Freeman. He's told that his arrest record or his arrest percentage is around 400% higher than every other officer in his department. And you get this kind of really fun, cheeky opening where he's talking about his achievements and all of the great stuff that he's done and all the stuff that he's accomplished. And funny enough, you get a little scene where he said that he sustained 3 injuries in the line of duty. The most recent being last year when he was stabbed by a man dressed as Father Christmas, so Santa Claus. Do you know who plays Santa Claus in that?
Yep.
You do? Okay,
Yeah.
So for the people listening, Peter Jackson, director of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, is the person who plays the Santa Claus that stabs Simon Pegg at the beginning of the film. Another really great cameo that is so funny because of how it's portrayed. Kate Blanchett, also from Lord of the Rings, amongst other things.
My goodness is all I have to say. I am so attracted to that woman.
Yeah, she's one of the most attractive women just ever.
her eyes, and that is all. Well, it's not all she needs, but man,
that's all you see in this movie.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah. So you find out that Simon Pegg is dating this woman who is played by Cate Blanchett, and she breaks up with him. They've been having trouble, but the best part is in the scene, it's like a crime scene, and she must be like some CSI person. So she's completely covered in like this outfit that covers her entire head, her mouth, her body. All you see is her eyes. So to have such an esteemed actress like Cate Blanchett show up in that one scene to play that character, and you don't even show her, I just think is so fucking hilarious.
Oh, I was going to talk about the opening part of that scene. That cracks me up.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
What's the line that he says? Nicholas comes in and he says, he like approaches Janine and he says, Janine, I have something to talk to you about. And you just hear the guy go, I'm not Janine.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. All the CSI guys who are examining the crime scene, they're all dressed in the same outfits.
Yeah.
So they all kind of look the same, to the point where, what does she say? Or he says, you're seeing someone or something.
Yeah.
And she goes, how do you know? And he's like, Bob told me. And then he's like, and then at the end, he's like, are you seeing Bob? And she's like, no. Do you think I'd be the type of person to see a guy like Bob? I'm seeing Dave. And she points, and Dave's standing right next to Bob, and he goes, hello.
Hello there.
Hello there. And again, they all look the same, and it's just a funny little comedic scene. But yes, Sergeant Nicholas Angel, he gets transferred to the countryside. One thing I didn't mention is there's like a whole little litter of cameos when he gets pulled into the sergeant's office, because first it is, like we said, Martin Freeman plays the sergeant, and then the next person above him is Steve Coogan, who is another very famous British actor. And then when Nicholas Angel still opposes to being transferred, he's like, I want to, bring in the chief inspector. And they're like, this is one of my favorite little visual gags too, because Steve Coogan is like slowly picking up the phone, and he goes, you really want to bring the chief inspector all the way down here for this? And he's like, yes, I do. And he goes, I forget Bill Nye's name, but he's like, he calls out the chief inspector, and the camera just, again, like Shaun of the Dead, it pans over, and the chief inspector, played by Bill Nye, is already standing there. And he's the one who comes in and is like, listen, you're simply making the rest of us look bad. That's why we got to get rid of you. And so they send Nicholas Angel to the little town of Samford, and it's like this beautiful little quaint village. It's won Village of the Year a dozen times over. Gorgeous little kind of, area. A great little kind of fun behind the scenes fact is the town that they filmed in was Edgar Wright's hometown. So I think that's why you get it. It's very well explored, in my opinion. Like, it is this small little quaint town, but you get to see so many little facets of it, little different shops, little different avenues and alleys. You get like the countryside bits, where they're out in a field, or they go visit someone who, lives in a, kind of remote farmhouse type of thing. But it just feels very well explored, and like they've, very much used the real location to its fullest potential. And I just love when you see that in a film. You really just get to see all the ins and outs of it, and just makes it feel very lived in and authentic. And I just kind of love that aspect. But one thing I love too is, again, just, Edgar Wright using little things and using transitions and little filmmaking tricks to show things. He's a big show don't tell kind of guy, which I absolutely love. And so a great little visual gag to show that Nicholas is leaving society and getting farther and farther away from society is he does a bunch of these little quick shots and quick edits and cuts as he's riding the train, and every so often it'll cut to his cell phone, and every time it cuts to the cell phone, his bar signal showing how close he is to like the nearest cell tower gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I just think that's a really cool little clever way to show him leaving society.
Now, how do you think in that scene, how do you think it would play out if it was a Christopher Nolan film? Because I know that's a big problem that some people have with like Christopher Nolan's writing, is that he just like...
If it was Christopher Nolan, the characters would be having a conversation in one scene, and it would pick up in the next scene them still having the same conversation, and then it would cut to a third location of them still having the same conversation, and as if it's almost like they leave the room and they're like, all right, we can't talk anymore. They go to a different room and they pick up the conversation. It is the most obnoxious thing about his movies, other than his over-reliance on non-linear stories. But that's for another day, another conversation. But yeah, so I didn't actually say this, but the reason that I'm introducing Hot Fuzz, Josh did Shaun of the Dead, and Josh will also do The World's End, is Hot Fuzz is actually my own personal favorite comedy of all time. I'm not exactly sure. I think I have it in my top 20 films of all time on Letterboxd. I'd have to double check, but it's one of my personal favorite films ever. It's one from the second I saw it. I just absolutely fell in love with it in a way that I didn't exactly Sean. My love for Sean came a little bit later. And just so much of what makes Sean good and such a great comedy and great film, period, is, in my opinion, brought into Hot Fuzz, but just elevated. And while I can probably agree to some extent that this film does not hit the emotional highs and lows of something like Shaun of the Dead, I think in all its other areas and facets, it really makes up for it. To me, this is the funniest of the three. I think the jokes and comedy and just the timing of it all is the best in this one of the three.
So, yeah, for me, I still feel like Sean's my funniest just because I think Simon Pegg is, I think, at his funniest in terms of like his performance. And I don't know. I think, so Nicholas Angel's kind of like, he's supposed to be. He's kind of like hard to like. He's just such a pain in the ass. He's got like a huge stick up his ass. It takes a little bit for like the comedy to kind of come. I mean, it comes in like every other way. Like it's not like it takes a while for comedy to come into focus here. But for me, he just cracks me up a lot more, like him personally in Shaun of the Dead. But there might be more like, I guess you said there's more gags in this one.
There's more visual gags.
Yeah.
I think there's we talked about the setup and payoff in Shaun of the Dead. I think the setup and payoff in this movie is even better, in my opinion. There's just so much clever reincorporation.
Yeah.
Even the littlest of things. There's a joke early on in the film where you meet the rest of the police officers and detectives in this small village. So we get, some new characters returning, or new actors, and we also get some returning ones. But one of the new characters, new actors into this film, one of the Andys is Paddy Considine. So if you guys are fans of House of the Dragon, he played King Viserys in season 1. Or if you guys are fans of Peaky Blinders, he plays the priest in season 3 of that show. But with all of that, you get him, and then the other Andy is the young guy who works with Simon Pegg in the first film, the one who's like, you got red on you. So they play the Andys because they're both named Andy. But there's one point where Simon Pegg is getting really frustrated with their lack of detective skills because they're the two detectives, the department. Everyone else is like just a regular police officer. And it's Paddy Considine who says, what do you want us to do? Ring up every name in the book, starting off with Aaron A. Aronson? And then literally at the end of the film, in the climax, you see a little boy who gets taken hostage, and his name is Aaron A. Aronson, which is, again, just like little shit like that carrying over is so funny. I
want to shout out Paddy for having, you know what, I don't know if it's the funniest part in the movie to me, but it is damn near one of them. I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit to like the middle of the movie when
absolutely go for it.
Spoilers ahead, guys. When one of the guys, George Merchant, when his house explodes, and they're like having a conversation outside, and it's right at the end of the scene, Patty says something like to Nicholas, if you didn't see anything suspicious, then who did? And the Andys are like in frame. And like Sean's head is kind of like on the right side of the frame, and so they kind of leave frame. And it's like these beats that hit like these dun, and Patty just goes back into frame and just looks at him. It's so, it's not even funny when I explain it. You just got to watch it. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
My
And
God.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something we didn't really highlight in Sean, but it's very present in all three of these. We kind of talked about how there's the, Don't Stop Me Now scene in the first one where, the song is synced to them hitting the bartender with the pool sticks. But in this, and again, all three of them, they use like little sounds, like Josh said, like a don or like a heavy bass or something, to add to the visual comedy. So like, when they do like a pan over and like, oh, you didn't realize that character was in the scene, and they reveal them like we've already talked about, they'll do that kind of little sound thing. And they just use these, again, little sounds, little notes here and there to just aid that visual comedy. And it's just also like, again, tied into each other and just really well handled. And like, again, the attention to detail, because that's like not sometimes you can get away with it, but it really feels like when you're watching all three of these films that it's not like Edgar Wright wrote the script, they filmed it, and then decided to do some of these things later. It felt like there was just so much planning and detail put into the pre-production, whether it was the shot list or the storyboard or just writing out the script and adding little notes like, oh hey, this is where we're gonna do a whip pan transition, or hey, this is where we need a match cut. And they have a really nice match cut in this movie towards the beginning, the first night that Sergeant Angel sleeps in his hotel or whatever, and it match cuts while he's asleep, and it's the next day, and it's bright and the daylight shining through, and it's just his empty made bed. So he, it's a good little character moment because you've already seen him obviously as this, character who obviously takes things very seriously, takes his police work, rather seriously, and it just aids more into just giving him more of a character where it's like, oh, he's the type of guy who wakes up early and makes his bed and goes out for a run. And I also had read, because not that Simon Pegg is at all even chunky or obese in the first film, Shaun of the Dead, but in this film, he looks a lot more fit and skinnier, which helps with the character that he's playing. Apparently he had lost around 20 pounds to get in shape for this role.
What's funny about that is that there's a moment in Shaun of the Dead where Liz just listing all the things that he promised that he didn't keep up on, and she just said, "You promised you would go back to the gym," and I'm like, "Oh, whoa,
hey, Simon Pegg kept up with it, it is what it is." But yeah, no, it's just, again, there's so much clever stuff in this, but we didn't really dig into the plot too much. We read the synopsis, but right as Sergeant Nicholas Angel arrives, his first night, he goes to the pub and he ends up arresting a bunch of teenagers for underage drinking, which is hilarious. I love the scene of him just interrogating them all, again, using those little sound motifs, because he looks at the sign that says nobody under the age of 18, and it's like a dome, and then he looks at each of the teenagers in the bar, and the last one is always the one that from the first time I watched this, I thought it was so fucking funny, but he sees one of the younger kids who kind of looks a little Harry Potter-esque, the kid with the glasses, and when he turns, he has braces, and the braces like do this bright shining light that like blinds Nicholas Angel for like half a second, and he goes around asking each of the kids their age, and I like the first one he asked, because I forget the date. I'll throw a random one out. He's like, "When's your birthday?" And he's like, "August 26th." And he goes, "What year?" "Every year." But it's that kid with the braces he asks, and it's one of the funniest noises I've ever heard in a movie come from a human being. But he asked the young kid, he's like, "How old are you?" And the little kid just goes, "Ah," and he just lets out this
I think
this little laugh.
In the commentary, I can't remember if they said that they altered his voice a little bit to make it a little higher. I can't remember though if they said that.
It's just a little it's just so, every time that he does that little noise, I lose my shit. It's just so good.
But yeah, so we got to talk about the genres that this kind of plays with, right? We talked about but each one definitely like mixes genres, but each one plays with like its own subgenre of horror. Obviously, Shaun of the Dead is the zombies. This one's like slasher. No, I think this is parodying action movies, right? No. Action is like one of the genres, but I'm saying it's subgenre of horror because each one has like kind of its own subgenre of horror that they bring in, because they bring in like that slasher whodunit kind of thing in this one, and they mix it with its main genre is action comedy. That's like its main thing, but they infuse it with the slasher. At least, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious with like the hooded figure with the axe, kind of like chopping people up, just like Shaun is like a romantic comedy infused with zombies. World's End has,
but like I think where I guess I differ a little bit is like I don't feel like this is parodying slashers or I guess these aren't really parodies. They're more satires, right? I wouldn't even say that they are. Are they? I think they just.
Yeah.
I think they're definitely. I think all three are considered satires, because I think the first one is a satirization, obviously, of zombie movies. The second is a clear satirization of action movies and like those over the top action films, like Bad Boys 2. And then the third one is a satirization of alien invasion.
Do they play? But is it a satire, or do they just play with tropes? Is that kind of or is that kind of the same thing?
That's the same thing. Yeah, I think when you play with tropes, like Scream is a satire. Like it's satirizing the slasher genre.
This one feels more like satire to me. It feels like the most like a satire than Shaun or World's End. Like this one really plays up I think they
It
said
does.
they read Roger Ebert's book on cliches of Hollywood or something like that. And they were like making a note of like all the thriller action cliches, and they were like, we got to put as many of these in there. So it's definitely like but it's not like poking fun at them. It's just kind of like, right, it's not.
It is, in a sense, especially like you said, this one.
But it's not a parody.
That's another reason why. No, I think parody is more like Scream, or not Scream, Scary Movie.
Yeah, okay.
Like let's put it this way: Scream is a satire, Scary Movie is a parody.
Yeah.
I think a parody is one that takes itself way less seriously and it's way more goofy. A satire to me is still trying to be a film and still trying to tell a story, but is also playing on those tropes and stereotypes of whatever genre it's trying to satirize.
Yeah.
And I think like what you had said, where this film definitely leans the most into the satire elements, is another reason why I think I prefer it amongst the three. And I already said this is one of my favorite films. It's my favorite comedy of all time. So clearly, guys, this one is my favorite. But I think that because it does so much in the realm of satirizing, and to me, it has all of the great character stuff. It maybe doesn't hit those emotional highs in the way that Shaun of the Dead does, like I said, but it still has really great characters. It still has really good, emotional moments, but still is taking its time to play on those tropes of action movies in a really fun and clever way. And I also kind of thought it was funny that I had kind of seen that, I guess Edgar Wright asked Nick Frost to watch 20 action movies in preparation for this film, and I guess Nick Frost had only ended up watching one action movie to prep for it. And can you guess which one it was?
Was it Bad Boys 2 or Point Break?
It was Bad Boys 2.
Okay.
Because Bad Boys
Point
2.
Break, I think, is one of Edgar Wright's favorite movies, right? He loves Point Break.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess I never.
I don't know if it's one of his favorites, but I feel like I read this. I know he loves the movie though. I think that's why there's like a big moment. In Hot Fuzz.
Speaking of that, I love he's like, it's when they're walking at the beginning with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, and he's asking him if he had seen all these action movies, and he's like, you ever seen Bad Boys 2? And Simon Pegg's like, no. And he's like, he stops, and Nick Frost is like, you ain't ever seen Bad Boys 2?
It's the stop. It's the stop in his tracks for me when they're just walking.
There
just
are
him stopping.
Many little moments with Nick Frost in this movie from just like a visual standpoint that are absolutely fucking hilarious. There's one scene where they find out that there is a swan on the loose, and Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are like trying to sneak up on the swan. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just me who thinks this is fucking hilarious, but Nick Frost extends his baton and then it does like a cut. And I guess this isn't a visual gag, but it does a cut, and Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, they're still in like a similar spot, but you see Nick Frost and he's trying to call the swan. And so he goes, and he's trying to call. Oh my gosh, I love just so many little moments with his character are just so funny.
When he shoves the cornetto in his mouth, when Nicholas gets like this brainwave, and he's like get us to the station, and he just shoves it in his mouth so he could drive, and he just like he's like fucking crying because of the brain freeze.
He makes like a funny ass noise too. He like shoves the ice cream in his mouth, and he goes. It's like half a second later, he goes, ah!
Yeah, he's like whining.
Oh my gosh, there's just okay. You want to talk about moments that like I never caught while watching this movie. Again, I've seen this movie the most out of maybe any movie in my life. I think I mentioned that on a previous episode that Hot Fuzz is the movie I've watched. Yeah, because you were saying that A Christmas Story is probably your most watched movie, and I was like, oh, I think Hot Fuzz is mine.
Yeah, not
but
by
I
choice.
never noticed it. So you find out that, not you find out. What am I saying? Nick Frost's character, his dad, which we didn't say, but Nick Frost's character in this film, his name is Danny Butterman, and fun fact. Nick Frost only agreed to do Hot Fuzz if he could name his own character, and so he chose Danny Butterman.
There's no way he would have stood.
Are you telling me that IMDb trivia is wrong?
I don't know.
But no. So you find out his dad is the head of the station. Is that the sergeant? I guess, right? That's what that would be.
Yeah.
So his dad is the sergeant, Sergeant Butterman, and he's giving Nicholas Angel a tour of the station. and his last stop that he shows him is the head of the NWA, which is another little funny reference in the movie, because if any of you are rap fans, you'll know NWA is one of the most popular rap groups of all time. Straight Outta Compton is one of the most classic West Coast rap albums of all time, and their most popular song is Fuck the Police. So naming the Neighborhood Watch Association the NWA, and the movie being about police, and it is very intentional. It's not like it's just like a hidden meaning. It is very intentionally done. But the head of the NWA, and he's badgering Sergeant Butterman about how the biggest crime is like graffiti, and the human statue is back, and that's like a huge issue in the town. But he hands off the papers to Detective Butterman, and he's finishing his tour with Nicholas Angel, and Danny is following them in the back, and they're in the hallway, and it's like this following tracking shot, and I never caught this, but he crumbles up the paper and he chucks it behind him, and I never caught this moment, but right before it cuts to the next shot, Danny headbutts the crumpled up paper.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
I spit my water out. I was like, I never caught that, but that is just another little tiny moment from Danny in this film that is so. I'm trying. When they're kind of giving Nicholas Angel grief about him being a big city guy, and I think it's not Patty, but it's the other one, Rafi or Rafe, whatever, the other Andy. And he's like, I bet you think everyone here just sells apples. And Danny goes, your dad sells apples, Andy. And he cuts back to Andy and he goes, and raspberries.
I'm trying to look up a list here, because I remember there was a few people from Harry Potter. There's
Professor Slughorn.
Slughorn is the sergeant.
Yeah, Slughorn is Danny's dad, yeah. Filch.
Filch is the gun guy. I forget his name. He's the guy with like just the collection of guns in his garage. But I thought there was a couple others that I'm just blanking on. There might not be.
Those are the two that, or the three that I know, or two. Yeah, two.
It might just be those two.
Olivia Colman's not in Harry Potter, right?
No. I'll be honest. It took a while. I think it just took a while for me to like kind of know Olivia Colman, because she's in like everything. She's a phenomenal
actress.
Yeah, and I think just like maybe the last 5 years, I think I just realized, wow, this woman is just in everything. I didn't realize she was in this.
In The Favorite. Have you seen The Favorite?
No.
Oh, dude, she is fucking standout in that film, and like that's Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone are giving amazing performances in that movie already, and just Olivia Colman is just killing it. But yeah, you get obviously in all three of these films, a lot of famous British actors kind of showing up and popping up here and there. But man, I'd love to. We kind of brought up how Filch is in the movie. He plays he's the guy who lives in like this kind of far out farm town, and he gets called. The police get called on him because he trimmed off his neighbor's hedges that weren't on his side of the property, and it's funny because it's a scene where they're making fun of British accents and how sometimes inaudible they are and how hard they are to understand, because Filch's character in the film, he's practically talking gibberish. Like you can barely make out what he's saying. And then they have one of the other police officers who's like this older guy. He's a little more audible and you can kind of understand. So but when Filch talks to Sergeant Angel, he turns to the other inaudible officer and he's like, what did he say? And he can't understand him. So he turns to Danny and he's like, what did he say?
Yeah, there's like three different like
like all these variations of like inaudible British accents that I thought was fucking hilarious. One of my favorite kind of setup and payoff jokes is when Nicholas Angel first arrives at his hotel or where he's staying, and he goes up to the front desk lady, and her head's down and she's doing a crossword puzzle, and she calls him a fascist, and he goes, pardon me? And she goes, fascist, and then she lists the description of fascist, and she's like 8 across, and then he goes, I see, hag, and she goes, excuse me, and then he describes hag. He's like 3 down, and he's like, oh, Bless your heart. And then at the end of the film, spoilers. I don't want to spoil it too much yet. All right, spoilers. You find out that there's not... Throughout the film, we talked about there's a series of killings, these grisly murders, and everyone's playing them off like accidents. And Sergeant Angel's trying to find out who the killer is, who the culprit is, and it's revealed that the entire NWA, the whole Neighborhood Watch Association, along with Danny's father, Sergeant Butterman, they are all of the killers. They all are taking part in these killings for various different ludicrous reasons. Like, they're the most juvenile, silly reasons. And all because they want to keep Sanford as the greatest village and keep winning the greatest village award. So anything that paints their town in a negative light in their eyes, they just kill the person, make them disappear.
Yeah.
And now I forgot where I was going with that.
Fascist.
The fascist thing, yes. So there's this huge, crazy, chaotic shootout at the end, which we'll break down a little bit more. But he runs into the front desk lady, and they just exchange that again. She yells out "fascist" while trying to like absolutely demolish him with this machine gun, and he shoots this plant that's hanging above her, and it knocks her out, and then he goes "hag." It is just like those little...
His delivery of "hag" is so funny.
Hag. And even like the little stuff where it's right at the beginning. It's when Sergeant Angel is being told that he's getting transferred to a small village to be their wait, no.
Are you talking about the list?
Sergeant Butterman, he can't be the sergeant because Nicholas is the sergeant.
Oh, then what is his role?
Would he be chief inspector? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm thinking about it. But it's when he's being told that he's getting transferred, and he goes, "Sir, you can't just make people disappear." And then that's exactly what the NWA of Sanford do, is anytime someone gives them trouble, they just make them disappear, including, you find out, their previous sergeant who had been transferred there, Sergeant Popwell, which I love that moment with Professor Slughorn in the movie where he's when he's first meeting Nicholas Angel, and he's like, "Sergeant Popwell thought as you did that the country would be easy, but he had one thing that you didn't have." And, Nicholas Angel sits up and he's like, "What was that, sir?" And I just love Slughorn's his the way he delivers it. But he goes, "A great big bushy beard."
Yeah, he's the inspector.
Inspector. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This always like threw me off. It's like a very tiny moment with Bill Nighy, when he says, "With all due respect, sir, you can't just make people disappear," and he says, "Yes, I can." It's like he gives him this look, this like evil look. I don't know why he does that.
That's like, I feel like that's part of his character, is like he plays it serious, and then it even the music changes for a moment, and then it goes back to him just playing it up for comedy. Like, it's very like he kind of switches his tone and mood. And a lot of the characters are this way. A lot of the characters are very ominous. Obviously, Timothy Dalton's character, Simon Skinner, which is something too. The first time I watched this, I just didn't realize that all of their different names, their last names, are like different occupations in the film. So it's like what are all the characters? It's like Skinner, Tiller, Butterman, like a person who makes butter, and like all of their different last names are a correspondent to like different occupations, which I always thought was funny. But one of the things that I just think is just so brilliant about this script, and I forget which YouTuber had pointed it out a couple years back, but I just remember watching this video, and they said something that never quite clicked with me, and it's throughout the entire film, Sergeant Angel has all of these different theories on why these people are getting killed, what the purpose is. He's doing all of this investigative work. And when he really, really, truly believes that it's Simon Skinner towards like the end of the second act of the film, he's like has this whole theory and he lays it out. And in any other film, it would have worked. It would have been a great motive. It would have been a great, because like you said, it is like a slasher whodunit, which is also another reason kind of why I feel like I enjoy this film more than the other two, is it does have that element. Like obviously I'm a huge Scream fan. If you guys listened to our first episode, we talked about each of our favorite franchises, and Josh actually said Cornetto, which is cool. Mine is Scream, and I'm just such a big fan of like a whodunit slasher. And so like those elements definitely elevate it for me, whereas like Shaun of the Dead is just like, a really good zombie comedy. it doesn't keep me guessing in terms of like who's behind something. And I don't know, just that little intrigue just to me like puts it above a little bit. But going back to my original thought, his entire like idea, his theory of why Simon Skinner is the killer, and he killed his own cousin because of this real estate problem, and that's why all these other deaths and how they're linked. And the video highlighted that, again, in any other whodunit thriller, it would have worked. But for the reason that all these killings are actually taking place being so trivial and silly, it just makes it so much funnier when so you find out that the first death is this like older gentleman, Martin Blower, and this young woman, Eve, and they put on this play. They put on a Shakespeare play, and it's fucking terrible, and it's so funny. And but they die a couple scenes after that, not long after, and you find out that the only reason that they were killed is because they were bad actors. And
Yeah,
it's in the exchange with Simon Skinner at the end when Angel finds out that the entire NWA is involved, and he goes, Martin Blower, Eve Draper, and he goes, well, they murdered Bill Shakespeare. and Nicholas goes, what? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, just again.
But you do get more motive from Frank when he does say like this all started because of his wife. So like the story is that Danny's mom, Frank's wife, killed herself because she was like driven mad with how obsessed she became of the Best Village Award. And that's kind of like what her life became about. And then I guess when she lost it to, I don't know if it was just people that like, I don't know if it was like a town over that like was filled with the like juvenile, like more juvenile people. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so that's why this whole thing does start. So you get more of like that reasoning behind like Frank being the head of this conspiracy.
That's
this
his
cult.
motive for like doing this, but their entire motives for like why they killed each person.
Yeah, individually is ridiculous.
Is silly.
Eve's is like
it has
she had
like an emotional reason, but
like George Merchant's he didn't keep up with the aesthetic of the village, so he had a bad house.
He had too nice of a house that
Eve
didn't
had
match with
an
their
annoying laugh.
rustic aesthetic.
Oh, the Leslie Tillman was just like, they were like upset about that, and they're like yeah, she was ashamed, but she was set on moving, and we couldn't let anybody enjoy her like fucking flowers or whatever.
Yeah, she was really good at like horticulture or agriculture or whatever, and they're like, we just simply, if we can't have her, nobody can.
Yeah.
And again, just like all of their reasons, even like the littlest of stuff. So like at the beginning of the film, like I had mentioned, when Nicholas Angel, he arrests all of these minors who are too young to drink, and gets them, brings them to the station and processes all the paperwork and stuff. And even the two people who own the bar, the guy and the girl, they at the beginning they're like, the way we see it, better them being here than making trouble out there, and like they're a couple months shy of 18, so we don't really see it as a big problem. And come to find out that all of these miners got murdered and were like thrown down a ditch. And so it's really just, it's like weirdly dark, but still played up for comedic effect. He stumbles across a bunch of skeletons, one of them being Sergeant Popwell. So, obviously they murdered the previous sergeant.
The shoplifter.
Another Game of Thrones. Yeah, the shoplifter. Another Game of Thrones alum. If you guys are Game of Thrones fans, the actor for the Hound, he plays Michael, aka what's his name? Slurg.
The big guy?
Yeah. His real name's Michael, but they have like a different name for him in the movie. The guy who says Yarp.
Let me see here. What the hell's his name?
Norp?
Michael Armstrong. I don't remember that being said.
He has like a nickname in the movie. That's what they mainly refer to him as. But so one thing I wanted to kind of highlight in this movie is I think when I obviously loved this film when I was younger. And while rewatching this time, I was like, so for those of you who don't know, because I guess I don't know why I said that. I didn't say it. I didn't watch these movies in order this time around. I started with World's End, watched Shaun of the Dead, and then watched Hot Fuzz. Because again, the chronological element of this doesn't really matter because none of the stories tie into each other. It's just, the same creative team and stars. So watching The World's End, and I'm like, while it is, stylized editing, and same with Shaun of the Dead, stylized editing, some snappier editing, a lot of, style in the, filmmaking and the transitions and the editing. But then I was watching Hot Fuzz, and I was like, there's a lot of cuts in some of these action scenes. Like sometimes I was watching it and I was like, it's a little over edited at times. Is this going to go down for me in my score this time around? And then it clicked with me, and I was like, wait, no, they're satirizing action movies.
Yeah.
And there's the hyper editing and the huge amount of cuts when they're shooting guns or the fight scenes. It's over edited on purpose to fit in line with them making fun and poking fun at all of these generic action movies like Bad Boys 2.
Yeah. Now, I have no issue with any of this. Could you see a point where someone says, yes, but it's not only in the fight scenes they do this, they do it for... I think it's funny that they do it for the paperwork. They make the paperwork like a fun scene.
Yeah.
But not even just the paperwork, but just like, I don't know. It could be anything they do. It could be like him just, when he like takes off his hat and he throws it before he chases the guy. Now, granted, that's leading into an action scene, but I'm saying, like, are there moments
But
in
that
this film...
stuff's in Shaun of the Dead and The World's End. Like, those kind of moments are in it. But I was more so thinking of the fight scenes and the action scenes in Shaun of the Dead and The World's End as compared to this. And when it comes to, like, it's one of actually my favorite aspects of this film is it is the only action movie about police officers that I know of that goes out of its way to make the most rudimentary, mundane aspects of being a police officer, and they edit it in a way to where it's almost as intense and dramatic as the shootouts.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is apparently while writing the script and doing research on police officers, detectives, the police force and whatnot, apparently one of the things that almost every officer they interviewed said was no action movie about police officers ever even touches upon the mundane everyday aspects of the job, like the paperwork. And there's even moments in the film where there's a great scene where Danny and Nicholas, they go to the bar and they get drunk, and then they go back to Danny's house and they watch Point Break, and then they watch Bad Boys 2. And there's a great little moment too where Danny goes into his closet of DVDs, which is a crazy big collection of movies. And apparently the DVD collection was a combination of Edgar Wright's, his brothers, and one of their friends. They compiled all their DVD collections together, and that's what they used for that scene. Which is kind of funny. Yeah.
I was going to say, because I've seen Edgar Wright's collection, it kind of looked just like that. So
I'm sure now, but this movie is also almost 20 years old at this point. Yeah, so I'm sure he's gotten a lot more. And if you guys have ever not seen Edgar Wright's Criterion Closet video, definitely check it out. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so they go to watch it, and oh shit, I lost my train of thought there.
When it's over, like Simon Pegg makes his comment.
Yes, it's about the paperwork, because they watch Point Break, and but I forgot to mention the little Nick Frost moment, but he pulls out Bad Boys 2 and Point Break, and he shows them to Nicholas, and he goes, which one? And Nicholas goes, ooh, which one do you think I'd prefer? And Danny just says, no, which one do you want to watch first? But they watch Point Break, and Nicholas goes, well, I won't deny that it's a no-holds-barred, adrenaline-fueled movie, but there's no way you could do that much destruction without conjuring up a vast amount of paperwork.
Yeah.
And then get cut to the end of the film and kind of, bringing things again full circle, setup and payoff. When they find all of the guns in Filch's house, they also find a sea mine. And they bring all of the guns in the sea mine to the evidence closet in the police station, and at the end they kick the NWA guy. He's the last guy standing. Breaks into their office. They kick him into the sea mine, and the entire station explodes. But before he kicks in the door, after the huge shootout, they're all filling out just a bunch of fucking paperwork. It's just, again, just like those little details that you don't think about, and you're like, oh, like, hey, that's just like a passing line of dialogue, or that's just like a little minor detail. And then boom, cut 30, 40 minutes later, cut to the end of the film, and oh shit, they're reincorporating that in a really clever and fun way. But yeah, I can maybe see somebody who maybe isn't as in tune with the fact that this is a satire of action movies having an issue with the over editing in certain scenes. But I think given the context of what it's trying to accomplish and the movie it's trying to be and the genre it is trying to satirize, I think a lot of the editing choices just really work with that sort of goal, I guess.
Yeah. When I was during the commentary, Edgar Wright did talk about that when they spoke to police officers and they made that comment, which is what made them decide, okay, Leah, let's kind of like keep this in line and engaging with like the action type editing. It's almost like the most action scenes is the paperwork.
Yeah. Again, I just love how just like dramatic and overly edited they are, and it's like they make the paperwork scenes feel like the shootouts do, and it's just, it kind of reminds me of Challengers, a recent 2024 film where they use this Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score during the tennis scenes, and it's like this like house dance music score that they're kind of very famous for at this point, and they use them during the tennis scenes. But then you have scenes of the characters, Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and then I forget the actor who plays the other male character in that film. But when they're just having argument scenes in that movie, they use the house dance score that's like really upbeat, really intense, really fast paced during the argument scenes, so that it feels like those arguments are just as intense and dramatic as the tennis scenes. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just, I always talk about this in filmmaking where, yes, I think the script is important. I think the story and the characters, and whether it's logical, whether it's believable or not, I think that is important. They always say the script is the blueprint of a film, but again, it is a visual medium. It's an, audible medium too. It's using story, visuals, and music and sounds to combine to create an experience. And when you really get into film and you watch a lot of movies and you're really digesting them and you start to look into filmmaking and what makes a film stand out in terms of just outside of the story, I love when a film like Hot Fuzz or Challengers can create an entire new experience for an audience member solely using its visuals or its editing or its sound choice or the music that they choose, using those elements of the filmmaking to create an entirely new experience. Like, there is not another police movie like this where you're going to see the paperwork filling out scenes done in such a way. Like, it created an entirely new experience, and that's so much of what I love about film and filmmaking, is just creating those experiences through other things outside of the script. Not to say that this script isn't amazing. Like, I think this is one of the best comedy scripts, period. Not just in the last 20, 30 years, just period. It's maybe not as tight knit, because I feel like this film is, I think, around 20 minutes longer than Shaun of the Dead. I think Shaun is like an hour 40, hour 45. This clocks in around 2 hours. And again, just like Shaun, I don't think any scene or line of dialogue or joke or little detail in this film is ever underused or underdeveloped. It all really just feeds into one another and just, again, comes so full circle and just all ties in so nicely to each other.
I want to talk about a moment that is very similar to Shaun. It's like kind of like the Ed moment, but it's all just visual. It's very quick, and I never noticed it until I watched the commentary. They pointed out when Shaun sees the graffiti. It's not Shaun.
Yes.
When Nicholas sees the graffiti on the fountain, it's right before he brings Danny in. He sees the plaque on the fountain, and it shows the NWA. It shows like all the members. So it gives you that, it like kind of like gives it right there, like who's involved in like these murders. It's not as like spelled out as Shaun is, but I actually now that I watched that, I can't remember if they do that in The World's End. So when we talk about that, we'll have to see. If
they do. A little bit, not as much, I think, as the other two, but there's a lot of like little details in that kind of like foreshadow. But what was I going to talk about? I had a really great moment. Oh, so we didn't really talk about the one character who gets killed, Tim Messenger, who he writes for the local Sanford paper. And you find out that the reason that they kill him is because he changed the paper into being more tabloid journalism. But the main reason is because every so often there'd be a spelling mistake. Like the one time he listed the one woman as 55 when she's 53, and he spells Nicholas Angel's name wrong, and it's read as Angle, Nicholas Angle, which they make fun of him for in the movie. And they really just kill the guy for just the most like mundane, simplistic reasons, all to maintain this perfect idealized village. Again, it's just so funny and silly, but in a good way.
He gets the most brutal one, honestly, which looks...
Yeah, okay. I did want to bring that up because it is a nitpick. It is not going to detract from my score at all. The CGI blood in this movie looks not great.
So I wanted to say, I thought the effects actually looked good when you see it like go in him, but when he falls, you see the blood splatter on his clothes.
The blood splatter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks really bad. There's another one later. I think it's when he shoots the plant above the woman he calls a hag.
Yeah.
When it hits her head and it hits her head and knocks her down, and her head like smacks off of a different object, and you get a blood splatter. Again, the CGI blood. Not
so
great.
Now when can you say, because I feel like sometimes you could even fall on they meant to do that because it's like satirizing like action movies that might have like poor or like
the
obvious
action
CGI.
movies that they're satirizing. I think it would be more satirization of action movies if it wasn't CGI blood. And again, if you're gonna go the CGI blood route, like I guess make it more prominent in the film. Like if you're gonna like make it really over the top, like a lot of the other elements are that are satirizing action movies, you gotta kind of lean into it a little bit more. Again, it's not a major crit. It is like a small nitpick where I was like watching it, I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't look particularly great and doesn't hold up, almost 20 years later. But that aside, there's so many perfect elements in the film that we've already highlighted. It was the Tim Messenger thing that I wanted to talk about, because every time he shows up at a crime scene and he goes to ask Nicholas Angel questions, not even a crime scene, just anytime he asks to interview Nicholas Angel, he always asks like these crazy, intimate, personal questions, and he's like, no, I don't want to really answer that. And then he's like, all right, well, what can I say for the paper? And it's right after they have the play. They go watch the Shakespeare play, and he's like, local sergeant loves to watch teen lovers, or like local police sergeant gives a thumbs up to teen suicide, and he's like, that is grossly inappropriate. But it's later, and it's after an actual like crime has happened, and they're on the crime scene, and he goes to interview Nicholas Angel, and he's like, no, I can't like answer questions right now, like this is a crime scene. And he goes, no, I didn't want to ask you anything like that. I just want to know what your perfect Sunday is. And then the other guy who he's like, he's not super fond of Nicholas Angel, but he's like the nice guy. He's the one who like has the glasses. He's like painted like Spider-Man at the carnival. I forget his character's name.
Nice guy. You think he's nice?
They're all pretty nice.
He's like an asshole.
Is he?
Yeah.
The
the whole thing with him is that when he's introduced, when Nicholas Angel comes in the office and he meets everybody, and that guy, what's his name? I forget his name.
Here, I'll look it up.
But he's introduced and he's in front of this whiteboard that has all these adjectives circled, and all the lines like point to his head. Did you know that?
I did, but none of them are like he's an asshole. They're just like, oh, he's incompetent, shows lack of leadership, lack of confidence. Right?
No, there's rude, disloyal on there.
Shit, I must have missed those then. But I mean, he comes around. I didn't see him as like an asshole. I just thought he was just upset and frustrated that like, because it's clear that he's not a fan of Nicholas because he's coming to basically take over his job and like tell him what to do and stuff.
He's like snarky. But he's like snarky. And like,
snarky. That's a better way to put it. He's not really an asshole. He's just kind of a little snarky. But he pulls Tim Messenger away, and he's like, I'll take care of the press. And he's like, now my perfect Sunday. And he kind of goes into a little thing. But I just thought that moment. But yeah, Tim Messenger's death is rather, honestly, a lot of the deaths in the movie are rather brutal. Leslie Till. Leslie Tiller, she gets stabbed with the gardening shears. You see Eve and Martin Blower's decapitated heads. The explosion one, I guess, isn't
That's the easiest
too graphic,
one.
but
Yeah.
even him, you see him toasted, don't you? Like you see his like charred corpse.
Yeah.
So
Which, by the way, I love. That's probably my favorite match cut in the in this movie is when he gets donked on the head, and then and Nicholas Angel like falls on the couch is when they're about to watch the movie. That's that's a really good one.
I love just the using Bad Boys 2, like that scene when they find out like what's happening or what happened, and it's the scene when Martin Lawrence gets a phone call, and it's like a 360 shot in Bad Boys 2, and he's like, shit just got real, and it's right after the explosion scene. I love the kind of the shootout at the end. One of my favorite little incorporated jokes or reincorporated jokes is when they go into one of the shops at the beginning of the film, Nicholas and Danny, and he hears over the radio or whatever. She's like, "Did you see the new angel or the new sergeant's in town? Check out his arse." And then later in the film, when Nicholas Angel arrives back in Sanford with a horse, and she goes, "Sergeant Angel's back. Look at his horse." It's just like, I love to, again, another great little reincorporation when they're at the county fair, and they're, Nicholas like displays his marksmanship skills with like a BB gun game, and hands it to Danny, and Danny takes the rifle and immediately accidentally shoots the head of the NWA, or no, not the head of the NWA, the town doctor.
Yeah,
he shoots the town doctor in the leg, and then later in the film, the doctor has Nicholas and Danny dead to rights during the shootout, and he's like, "Throw down your guns," and Danny just throws the shotgun to the ground, and it goes off and just blows off like a part of the doctor's foot. It's just...
Well, and Nicholas Angel has like the callback lines, because when he shoots him with the BB gun, he says he's all right, he's a doctor, he can deal with it, or something like that. And then he says it to him, "You're a doctor, deal with it."
There's so many like clever little reincorporations with the jokes and lines of dialogue that you miss some.
Yeah, I love just like, it's not even like a hidden one, but just like when they're in the car and he's trying to like find like if there's something going on, he's like pointing out the people, Mr. Treacher with the long coat. He's like, "Why has he got that long coat on?" And he's like, he's just pointing out all these things that come back like, oh yeah, he was right the whole time. He did.
Yeah.
He was armed. The girl on the bike in her basket has like the 2 pistols. Yeah, everyone's just fucking like loaded and armed at all times.
Which is again, it goes back to one of the Andes where he's like, there's more guns in the country than in the city. Everyone and their mums is packing here, and everybody in Sanford was in fact packing guns, which is great. I love the little. Oh, this is a fun little thing too. Apparently, before equality was brought to UK police, all female police officers were referred to as Doris.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's Doris is the name of Olivia Colman, the only policewoman in the film.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. So, again, a nice little kind of reference there to some real world stuff. I love, again, I'm just going to talk about a couple Danny moments I love. So when you first meet Andy, he's in the bar, and this is before Nicholas knows that he's a police officer and the son of the inspector. And he gets super hammered, and he ends up drunk driving and, crashing into the water fountain or whatever. And so Nicholas brings him into the station and... puts him in one of the holding cells, and it's the way that Nick Frost, he delivers it. But the next day, Danny's in police uniform, and Nicholas goes, "Why are you in a police officer's uniform?" And Danny goes, and he says it like he's confused, and he's like, "Because I am one."
Yeah, he like asks him the question. I like that this movie brought in the what World's End just like took by storm excessively, but really nicely. The shots of the drinks getting filled up, I love those shots.
Yeah, those little like kind of close up
and I love
insert
that,
shots.
Yeah, and Nicholas Angel's thing is that he always gets like a cranberry juice before Danny like warms him up to get in a beer with him. But I like that it like shows his cranberry juice get filled up. It just looks like splashes of blood, and it's like I think it's before like the first murder happens. So just like nice little visual moments there that kind of foreshadow what we're gonna see.
Yeah, I another little Danny moment that I love is where is it? It's two great moments that I love from him, and then I mean I'm really kind of at the end of my notes. I feel like we kind of covered a lot of the elements, but it's two scenes with Danny, and Sergeant Angel is giving a kind of speech to a class of students, and he's like, any questions? And Danny raises his hand because he's sitting next to the students like a little kid. And he's like, is it true that there is a spot in a man's head that if you shoot it, it'll blow up? And then, hold on, because I have it in my notes. I want to make sure I get it right. It's when he asks if Nicholas has ever been hurt in the line of duty, and he goes, yes, I was stabbed. And he goes, how was it? And he goes, it was the single most painful experience of my life. And then Danny goes, what was the second most painful?
And he just looks at the camera, just like in disbelief.
One great trivia fact that I think you'll get a kick out of that I thought was absolutely hilarious. In the original version of the script, there was supposed to be a love interest for Nicholas Angel, a character named Victoria, but I think they thought the script was too long at that point, so they completely removed her character, but instead gave all of her dialogue to Danny.
Really?
Without, apparently, according to them, very minimal changes to the dialogue. And then while I was rewatching it this time around, it clicked because there's like great scenes where when I watched it the first time around and before I knew this fact, I was like, oh, that's just they're developing a great male friendship. You know, you have that scene where they're drunk when, you know, they're watching the two action movies and they're getting really emotional and personal with each other. And, you know, Danny's like, you got to learn to shut that thing off, like in your brain, because you just take your job too seriously and you don't leave yourself enough emotional room for anyone or anything else in your life. And, shit. What was I saying? What was I thinking of?
Well, it was the original script was for a woman, and they didn't really make any changes.
Yes. And it's like little moments like that where I was like, oh, had totally seen that scene being a new female character that was supposed to be Nicholas's love interest.
They didn't even talk about that in the commentary, but what they did talk about was how they loved the scene right before that, and it makes so much sense now what you're saying, because it's after they walk home from the pub and they get to Danny's house and he's kind of like, this is me. And it's like that moment where you like, and he says, you want to come in for a cup of coffee? And he's like, no, I'm okay. How about some tea? And he's just like, no caffeine after midday. And he's just like, how about a beer? Like, but it's just like, it's like, I was like, are they trying to make it like kind of like funny, like a female relationship? Did not know that little fun fact.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you, because with that fact, I was like, I think this movie's kind of perfect as is, and I don't need a love interest character. And I think that can actually kind of bog down a film sometimes when they feel like they need to include romance in it. But I was going to ask if you thought like the film would be better or worse if they had kind of included a love interest.
No, because I think, so what I like about this character and how it's different is that like Sean, it works. That's like something that just fits. This one, I don't know. You kind of, because Danny works well enough to like improve him as a character. I don't think the girl would like, that's not where he needs to, he needs to like kind of fix himself in that area, you know, based off of Janine. But his main priority is just to like kind of like let loose a little bit as a person and learn from someone like Danny, who's just like, you know, he has like no friends. And like, I think that's where he needs the most help, is like, he needs to just like allow himself to see, like enjoy life. And that's why I like the scene where I like when you get, I think I kind of warmed up to, not that I never had a problem with this movie in any regard, but like, I think I just appreciated it more, their friendship, when you see the slight progression and you realize, I think I don't know if this was true, but when I was listening to them talk about it, they were like, and that's the first time Nicholas Angel smiles. And he said, "What time we at? 45 minutes. We get a smile from Angel."
Really?
I don't know if that sounds like it's probably true.
I fully believe that because I can't think of a time before that scene where he does smile.
So it's when he's like talking to him about like what made him want to become a police officer and stuff like that, and he's talking about this emotional story with his uncle, I think.
Yeah. It was his uncle.
And Danny just says something that makes him laugh, and then it's just like the first moment of like, oh, he's finally opening up. He's like making himself like he's letting his guard down a little bit. And it's just
and that's where
just those little nice moments that just it's like a new arc that it's just completely different from the previous movie of like he's like he's too extreme, almost like the Pete characters where it's like they're too like regimented almost, where it's like
too reserved.
Yeah.
Well, it's great too because like again like I had mentioned that I agree that this film does not kind of reach the emotional depth and heights of something like Shaun of the Dead, but there are those nice little moments, and I do think both characters, they're still there. They're just not as emotional because you don't have characters like dying,
right.
And that's one thing that we didn't really highlight, and I'll get to that in a second. But no, what I really love is there's two really great character arcs in this movie. As Nicholas Angel, he becomes a little more open, and he opens his heart up, and he opens his mind up to just letting loose a little bit, not taking everything so seriously and living outside of just your work life. But also, Danny is kind of a bumbling idiot at the beginning, and not to say he becomes super cop by the end of the film, but by the end of the film, he's stood up to his father, he's kind of gained a little bit of agency, and he's also become a better police officer. Like, I know it's played up for laughs, but I love that moment when Danny gets real serious, and it's kind of a callback to when Simon Pegg was telling him, like, about Eve and Martin Blower being in a relationship, and I think it's right after the play, and he's like, listen, we just sat through 2 hours of so-called acting, and that kiss they shared was the only believable part. And then cut to later in the film when Danny's going in on everybody, and he's like, we watched 2 hours of so-called acting, and that kiss was the only believable part. But it's Danny again just taking agency,
and he puts his hand on his
funny.
shoulder, like he's just like, it's like, I got you.
He's like proud of him, and he goes. The whole reason he witnesses Leslie Tiller's murder is because he's going to go buy a peace lily for Danny's birthday, and like he feels bad. Like Danny didn't tell him about his birthday because they were investigating the crimes, and I don't know, I just think that all around, just they do a really great job with the characters in this movie. A lot of the characters, even like we mentioned how the snarky cop, even him, like he's kind of a bumbling idiot through most of the movie, doesn't really know what to do, doesn't know how to handle these situations, and then cut to the end of the film when the rest of the police officers join Nick and Simon in their cause to take down the rest of the NWA, and you have the moment where they're trying to figure out what to do, and his character steps up and this is what we need to do, this, and this. And Simon Pegg is, reverse of that dialogue they had earlier in the film where it's, what he said, let's do that. And
does that guy, let's just ask a question here. Does that guy deserve that moment? Like, when does he learn? When does he learn from, like, he's an idiot, like 3/4 of the way. So,
I guess. This is where we always differ, though. You're always like, that's not believable.
No. Not that it's not believable, but I'm not saying that guy, it doesn't really, I wouldn't highlight him as having like that good of like any kind of like I wouldn't put him as like a good character. No. He's kind of like like just like a fun addition.
I'm not going to say he's a great written character, but I'm just saying like, I like seeing like a character at least develop, or they have an arc, right? So like he does. It's not, the film doesn't focus on him, but I like that moment towards the end where he's the one who steps up, and now it's like a reverse situation of, earlier when, I think it was right after the car crash where Eve and Martin Blower die, where he doesn't know what to do, and he looks to Simon Pegg, and he's like, we need to set up a perimeter, we need to close off the bodies so that people driving by don't see them, all these like little things. I also we didn't talk about it. It's completely out of left field, but I love Simon Skinner's introduction. It's when Nick is running through the town and Simon runs up next to him and he's like, lock me up. I'm a slasher. I'm a slasher of prices.
So I will say, I think that's also another thing I like. I wanted to wait till we talked about Hot Fuzz more to like kind of go back to it, is that I think Sean does the better job of exploring like multiple characters without deviating from like the main protagonists of the movie. I don't think that's really a negative. That I'm not using it to like put any negative on Hot Fuzz. I'm saying it just, that's what elevates Sean for me a little bit more, like additionally, is that it does have that like just ensemble aspect as well, where like I'm trying to think of like Hot Fuzz, like where obviously for the main two you get a little bit of well, Frank is like the villain, so he's kind of like, you know, he's kind of like the same. You just kind of get motive at the end, but Shaun of the Dead just has such a collective community where you get characteristics that kind of develop them and make them feel very real, you know? So I think that's what really hits for me with Shaun. But
no, I can't disagree with that.
But yeah, Nicholas and Danny, they I like that Nicholas is on the surface, he's got it all put together. There's like this is the opposite of Shaun, where it's like there's no immaturity, but you realize there actually is. Like he's immature in the way of like he never grew out of that mindset that he had when he was 5 years old. Is like this is how he was since he was a little kid. So he never had a moment to like humanize himself. So he is immature in the sense of like he's too like almost cartoonish with his philosophies on a police officer. Like this is everything you need to do. There's no like, I don't know. So I like that he's immature and almost like he's too perfect of like.
I think it's Sean is surface level immature. When you say the word immature, that's what you think of.
Right.
He doesn't take life seriously. He doesn't take his relationship seriously. He doesn't put in his best foot forward. He's working a job that is kind of filled with essentially teenagers, and he's still on the same level as them. And then you have a character like Nicholas Angel, who is, I'd say, emotionally immature.
Yeah.
He is mature in the sense that, like you said, he's got his life together. He loves his job. He's got a good job. He's good at his job. But everywhere else in his life, he seems to be failing. He is, he's having failing relationships. He doesn't really have any close friends. Like you said, he never got out of that mind state or that state of mind that he was in when he was a kid. To him, being a police officer was all he could ever focus on. And there are a lot of people like that in the world. There are people whose jobs take up their entire life and it's their entire personality. And then there are people like Sean in the world. So that's a great way to point out that these films explore immaturity in two very different, but both very interesting ways.
Yep. That's what makes Nicholas Angel laugh. Because he says, before I wanted to be a cop, maybe when I was like 3 years old, I wanted to be Kermit the Frog. That doesn't count. And then Danny just says, it's a shame. And he says, why? And he says, I think you would have made a great Muppet. And that's what like makes him laugh. That's what kind of like just warms him up to Danny a little bit more. One of my favorite Danny moments, though, one of the funniest ones for me, but it's when they're at the grocery store, and it's when he takes out Michael. Nicholas takes out Michael, and Danny's response is, "Did you say cool off?" And he's like, what? And he like says, he's like, you should have said like cool off as like a little quippy thing. And he's like, no, I didn't. And Danny's just like, shame. And then Nick is just like, well, there was a moment in my apartment earlier when I was fighting with him, and I gave him the monkey. He was playing with the monkey, and I smashed his face over with a peace lily. And before I said playtime's over. And then Danny just changes his tune and just says, "You're off the fucking chain." He just as he's reloading his gun. That shit is just so funny. I love what like that's his go-to just remark of, "Did you say cool off? Shame." You missed that on that golden opportunity. But they have those moments in Shaun too. That it seems like I'm trying to remember if they have it in The World's End. I'll remember it more as we talk about it. Or it's like they do those one-liners before they attack. When he's like, "Sorry, we're closed," and he shoots. It's like, I like that. That's like an important thing for them to do, is like say like a little quippy line before they just attack someone. Yeah. So that Jake's notes are pretty much wrapped up. Mine's wrapped up. I'm ready to kind of go into the last flavor of the Cornetto trilogy. I believe that flavor is going to be mint, nice green flavor, which I will introduce after this brief commercial break, guys.
Hey there, Franchise Deep Dive listeners. My apologies. A little weird that you're hearing me like this and breaking up the flow of the episode. But I messed up, and during the editing of this episode, I did not realize that my audio levels were extremely, extremely low to an inaudible level for a good portion of the World's End discussion. I'm not sure how it happened, but hopefully it does not happen again in the future. So a little bit of this discussion had to get erased because my audio was just not audible. So I'm just going to cut us into when I figured out, I guess, while recording that my audio was not great. And I'll just lead right into that. Sorry again, guys. Won't happen again.
This is what I've been waiting to add. So obviously I watched the commentary. I've been talking about this whole episode as just the damn commentary. But during it, Edgar Wright just gives like a mention to Before Midnight. And he kind of compares this. He's not really saying, he's not like giving his opinion on like what he thinks is better, but he said this one's kind of like the upsetting one. Like, so yeah, this one deals with a lot of like, I'd say heavier themes, heavier character moments, and, you know, different lows that characters have. So I think it explores a lot of just more upsetting topics. And so that's what he's kind of comparing it to. He's talking to Simon Pegg, and he's like, have you seen Before Midnight? And, you know, at the time he was like, no, I really want to check. And he's like, oh, it's really good. But he said it's bothersome when you watch it because you spend this time learning these two people that you love, and then this one it completely, well, if you haven't seen the Before trilogy, stop listening to this comment. But yeah. But yeah, he was just kind of comparing it to like you see things like, especially with Gary and Andy when they fight. There's a moment in this movie where they physically fight, and it's like it's upsetting to the audience because you're like, damn, I don't want to see like these two characters that I've watched, you know, punching each other in the face. So I thought it was just fun that we just did the Before trilogy, and I hear him mention it, give it a call out, and he likes that film a lot. So that was also nice to hear. But yeah, so. This, I don't know if people just had a problem with the sci-fi element. That I think some people just say it felt. These movies have always been over the top, but I think this one just kind of maybe felt a little too goofy for some. I don't know. I didn't get that, but
That's interesting because I just don't find, like, I find goofier stuff in Shaun of the Dead, and not in like a negative way, but just in terms of like tone. And yeah, we've talked about how there's some more visceral, violent things in that movie, but when you come to this one, like you already mentioned, they kind of talk about and deal with a lot more complex and sadder, more dark stuff. And I think the film kicks off with that because you had kind of talked about how, you know, we didn't really say how the film opens up, but it starts out with an opening narration, very similar to Hot Fuzz. Obviously, Simon Pegg, this time as Gary King, giving this opening narration and talking about how when he was in high school, him and his friends tried to do this Golden Mile, the 12 pints and 12 pubs thing. And he goes through that night and how, they got to a certain bar, and then the one passed out and he didn't make it, and then they kept going, and by the end it was just the three of them, and they tapped out at bar number 9, and then they went to this hill and watched the sunrise. And he's speaking of it like this really fond, happy memory, but then it ends with, we knew in that moment it would never be as good as it was right now, and it never was. And then you cut to where Gary is giving this monologue in, and he's in an AA meeting. And I don't know if you caught this. This is one of the bigger kind of Easter eggs, but the woman sitting next to him is Mary from Shaun of the Dead, Bloody Mary. So I like that little kind of inclusion.
Said the other guy next to him was someone, I think it was another zombie in Shaun, but I can't remember who. It was someone. But they instantly started talking about, and this is what made me kind of dissect when I was talking about David's wardrobe and just wardrobe in general and Shaun, what the colors could mean. Because, like, that they're so attentive that they are putting kind of like meaning behind even colors of people's wardrobes. Because he talks about it in this, and he's like, kind of have Simon Pegg dressed in these tealish colors, these kind of like bluish greens, to foreshadow obviously like the blue blood, but like kind of where he is right now in his life is kind of this conformist circle group of like, he's kind of like conforming to this rehab kind of thing. So it's kind of like the blanks they're conforming to this network that's controlling them. So I think that was what they said was the mindset of like dressing him in those colors. And they do more of that with Blue, with Oliver and Pete. This is pretty obvious when they're like formed, when they're doing the flashback. It's like Gary in the middle, and then it spaces them out. They're in the same order when they're older, when they're walking, but they put Pete and Oliver on the ends because they're the ones that eventually get separated from the group, and it just becomes and which is another callback to what Simon Pegg says about his ridiculous comment about the Three Musketeers. He's like, I think they missed the mark with that one. I mean, they should have done Five Musketeers, because if two die, then you still have the three, and Andy's just like, are we there yet? But that comes back because two of them do die, and it is the trio in the middle that are still standing. But they dress Oliver and Pete also in blue. They're the only ones in blue out of the group because they're the ones that get taken eventually and turned into the blanks. So I thought just a lot of just small things that just add so much. I was like, oh, I want to like kind of look into this more when I watch Shaun or Hot Fuzz.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it's again, like there's so much of that kind of just clever setup and payoff, like you had mentioned. There's little details kind of hidden throughout the movie that kind of just allude to, and I don't think we've fully come out and said it, but what ends up happening is they get a few pubs in, and Gary is having a little bit of an emotional breakdown. And earlier in the film, the way that he gets Andy to kind of come along with him is he lies and says that his mom died. And you kind of get a little bit of backstory, and it's really well set up in my opinion. But Andy, Nick Frost's character, is the last person who he approaches to go on the little pub crawl with, as he approaches all the other ones first, and they all have the same question because he lies to them and he says all the guys are going. He kind of pulls that movie 43 thing where he's like, oh, everyone's already going, so you should come too. And they all go, really? Andy Knightley is going out drinking with you? And come to find out that at some point, Andy and Simon Pegg got way too drunk together. They were on the way to the hospital. Andy was driving Simon to the hospital, or I'm sorry, Andy was driving Gary to the hospital because actually I don't think it was drinking. I think he OD'd. They said that I think
did they say
right? He OD'd?
Did they say he OD'd? They might have, I think.
I think they said yes. I think they said Gary OD'd and Andy was driving him to the hospital 3 times over the legal limit. He crashed the car, and I guess at some point Gary woke up and just walked off and left Andy, and he almost died. He literally almost died. He had 12 hours of life-saving surgery, and so obviously there's a lot of resentment, a lot of aggression built up from Andy towards him. But you get to a point in the film and they're at the bar, and Gary goes into the bathroom, and Andy at this point he sees that I'm mixing them all up now. Gary left his phone on the table, and it's a call from Gary's mom. So they know that he lied, and this is at the same time happening as Gary's in the bathroom, and he runs into one of these youngsters that they saw. And Gary's already in a frustrated state of mind, and he's like, we were the kings of this town, and you guys have no idea we blazed this path. He's like the stereotypical guy who just never left high school. He's still in that high school state of mind, and the youngsters please don't touch me, don't do that. And Gary gets into an altercation with him, and that's when what happens is Gary tackles him. The guy, his head hits the bottom part of a urinal, and it just pops off like a cap to a soda bottle, just pops off, and blue blood leaks everywhere. And that's when Andy and one of the other friends, they come into the bathroom. Andy's pissed off, and then we get into a huge altercation. Then you come to find out that basically what happened is there's an alien invasion. The town of New Haven has been taken over by aliens, and they started replacing the citizens who would not cooperate. So now you take a film that starts off as just this sort of comedy drama about this group of friends trying to relive their childhood, trying to retain that sense of childhood wonderment and whatnot, and accomplish something that they failed upon when they were kids. And then it turns into a completely different movie in a sense, where you get an entire alien robot subplot, and the use of the word robot is kind of put into the movie, and they kind of play it up for comedic laughs because they find it like an offensive word because robot apparently means slave, which I think is like a funny little inclusion. But I had a question for you, because this is something that we've disagreed with, and I love when we disagree. There are certain movies where it starts out a certain way, and when they do a really heavy change, and I know you know what movie I'm talking about because we've disagreed on it, and they go a completely separate route, and they like introduce something completely new to the story, and you're usually not a fan of that. So I'm curious why The World's End works for you, other than it just being in this trilogy.
So, listen, it's not that I always hate when that happens, because I don't. First off, I do think this film, compared to the other two, I think it is an abrupt change. They do give you some like slight, like notifiers in the beginning to kind of like build it, but it's not really as noticeable when you rewatch it. So I do think that kind of comes out of nowhere. I think that could be seen as like not as tight as the other two, of like how it blends it. That's a minor thing for me for The World's End, but comparing it to the two, that's why I don't think it's as I don't think it blends it as well as the other two blend their genres within their script. But The World's End is just it's done. I just think I don't think there's any problems that much with like its script. So like that becomes a nitpick. It doesn't become like a main thing. Whereas like other movies, that is a distracting thing. And if nothing else is really like working for me, it only makes the overall product worse for me. But there's so much good in The World's End.
But like, I'm specifically thinking of From Dusk Till Dawn, which we've talked about a couple of times, but your sentiment for that movie seems to be, I like the movie a lot and I like what they're doing up until the big twist, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
So I think in The World's End, I think if it just went into like, let's have a crazy fun storyline with like alien invasion, and it almost forgot about everything else, that's what I think happens in those other movies. But World's End, it completely keeps its themes that it just like spent time developing. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the difference for me with those two movies. Is World's End doesn't become a different movie for me. It becomes different in terms of its like attitude and like just like over the top, because it's very serious. It's absolutely very serious in like the first, what would you say, 40 minutes that it like the switch happens.
Yeah.
Whereas like Shaun of the Dead, there's like I don't know, you're getting those that world kind of early on in like subtle ways, but it's still silly. It doesn't feel as like, not that World's End is like heavy-handed, but it just it kind of is. It is, because I think the character, like aside from Gary, he's like kind of like silly. He's kind of like a mix of like Danny and Ed, but like obviously some different like.
I think he's what Sean would have been if Sean
That's a good
didn't
point.
go through that character transition.
He's more like Ed, I'd say, but he's more manipulative than Ed. So he's a lot more like evil. Ed's not evil. Ed's just like he's just like a.
I don't think Gary is evil. I think Gary's
he's
just
not
a compulsive
evil.
liar.
Yeah, he just does things that are fucked up. Like it's just fucked up.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Where he's like sometimes he is a bad person. Like he uses his mom's death to like get what he wants. You know.
I mean, he also left his best friend dying. Like that's.
So he's like an even more extreme version of Ed. But where was I going with this? So it's very serious with like no one's having fun out of his friend group in a lot of this. So I actually forget where my train of thought was going with that, because I was comparing it to like.
It gets wrapped up.
God damn it.
I was just and I understand. Like, I guess the point of the question was, it's just, I feel like the complaint you have for a movie like From Dusk Till Dawn could be applied to a movie like The World's End. Now, I understand different movies, different experiences, different reactions, but I could see someone saying the same thing about World's End that you say about From Dusk Till Dawn, where you're like, I was really enjoying the writing and the characters, up until that point.
Look,
and then it
let me
becomes
change up kind of, because I think I made it seem like I thought From Dusk Till Dawn in the first half was like an amazing movie. I don't think it's that great. It just it felt better to me once I was introduced to the second half. I was like, oh, I liked what I was getting before. And
see, I'm on the opposite end. I think the first half, I'm like, this is like generic crime thriller.
Yeah, I don't think it's like amazing writing or anything. I just think it felt more intriguing to me than what I got. And again, I would, if it somehow did it like The World's End, where it felt like it infused that subgenre, like the alien invasion, and infused it with it. This one completely flipped a coin and just went a different route. Where I don't think it made sense to do that. I think World's End has it make sense. It fits in with what it's trying to say. It's not like they just put alien invasion. They make it work. They make it like thematically work within the script.
Yeah, because I guess there is, and I kind of want to jump to the end, and we can double back and talk about other scenes, but I do kind of like that thematic relevance where Gary's whole thing is his inability to conform, right? His inability to conform to societal norms, to get out of that I'm still a young teenager mindset. And the film does a really great job. Obviously, the film is about an alien invasion where they're replacing people to make them conform to this idealized version. They kind of talk about at the end, like the big alien voice is saying how Earth is kind of like a negative blight on in the universe, and kind of paints everyone else in a bad light.
Do you know who voices?
Which I think is.
Do you know who voices the network?
Is it Bill Nye? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, didn't even need to look that one up. It just sounded like him. But yeah, they do something cool, and this is something I never noticed until looking through just interesting facts about the movie. And it was every car that's in New Haven is the exact same model.
They talk about that.
It's just different color.
And isn't it like
which
is it supposed to be like a hybrid car? I forget if it is or not.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a hybrid. Which I think is again just but even coming to the end of the movie, it's like Gary, and it's funny because they're all like hammered drunk, they're 12 pints in at this point, or at least Gary is, and he's just basically telling this alien monolith to fuck off because like this is Earth and we do what the fuck we want to do. And it's just him like just emphasized with that, I'm not going to conform. We are not going to conform. We are individuals. We're individualized. We have our own personality. We don't want to be a part of your shit. And again, those like just the themes of like, alien, conformity, control, all that stuff, and just the subversion of that. And yeah, it's done really well. I think all three films thematically work really well in what they. I just think this one, the only point of my question was because I think this one definitely sets up, because Shaun of the Dead, it's not long into the movie where the zombie apocalypse happens. The name itself, Shaun of the Dead, is kind of like a hint at what's going on. Whereas if you never watched, a movie by Edgar Wright, you didn't see Shaun of the Dead, you didn't see Hot Fuzz, and you just watched The World's End, and this is a couple, this movie came out a couple months after This Is the End. Like they weren't, far apart in terms of release. And this is obviously a way better movie than This Is the End. I enjoy that movie a lot. It's a funny comedy, but this is an actually great movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I was just curious because I know it's From Dusk Till Dawn is my big one, but there's other movies that we've talked about where, whether it's like The Substance or just other movies that take like a big turn. And I think this one, because it is so late into the movie when you find out, oh, there's an alien invasion going on. And,
I'll have to think of examples where like I also like am okay with it. Like I got to think of some for you because it's definitely not just World's End that I like it.
There's not a lot of movies that do such a huge story.
That's what I'm trying to think. If I could think of any, but
yeah. One of the little details that I didn't pick up on, but when they go to the bar, the mermaid, it is I think it's 3 mermaids on the logo of the bar, and it's 2 blonde mermaids on the left and right, and a redhead mermaid in the middle.
You said on the sign, or I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, on the sign there's two blonde mermaids and one red one. Obviously, later in the film, they bring in the marmalade sandwich, which is two attractive blondes with a redhead blonde in the not a redhead blonde, just a redhead in the middle. So I thought that was.
I remember
fun.
when I found out about like the whole meaning behind the names of each pub, how it plays into the story. It made me love it even more, which I'm assuming you know about, right?
Sorry.
Like each name of the pub is like predicts what's gonna like what happens.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I do. That's what I
Yeah.
was talking about when we were talking about how like the World's End does kind of loosely hint at what the events are gonna, you know, play out, but it's not as like surface dialogue as like Shaun of the Dead, where it's like Ed is literally laying out the plot of the movies just through like hidden meaning. Which,
Oh yeah, I guess
but-
that's the same thing right there. I didn't even. Yeah.
It's great. Each of the three films, they all like tell you essentially, like even Hot Fuzz, like you said, like they show you who all the killers are at the beginning of the film, which is
What's
really
your?
great.
Do you have a favorite pub that correlates like for the name to the plot? I'm trying to think. You know which one really makes me laugh? I don't like. It's very simple. The second
Which
one.
one? Oh wait, what's the second
The
one
Old
called?
Familiar. And it's just like
yes,
it's just like the same exact pub, just with.
Oh, I'd have to look at all the bars or all the pubs in the movie. Oh, let's see. What are we? I got the Mermaid, the Old Familiar, obviously the World's
The famous
End.
cock is the third one, and that's the one he's barred from. What the hell's the fourth?
Oh, another little detail in all the pubs. The symbol that the aliens have is on each of the glasses that
is it?
they pour out. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was on like these banners in front of this building. It's like near the end of the movie. I think it's when they're hiding behind the cars. There's like I forget what. There's 3 banners and it has the logo of the network, and it says we could. I forget. It's like we for each banner. It's like we I don't remember. We conform or we control. It was like 3 different things. Never noticed that. Let me see here. They did say this is something very slight. They even mentioned how he does like a rock bottom to the kid, and they were like, we kind of did that as like a little nod to The Rock, who we love. Like they love Dwayne Johnson. They were saying we chose rock bottom. That's also like a play on like addiction and like stuff like that. Like that's like a term. You hit rock bottom. That's kind of where Gary is. So they kind of like had. That's why they had Gary do that move. I think.
I got my favorite one.
What is it?
I had to look at all of them. It's got to be the 2-headed dog.
Oh, with the fucking legs, the twins. Yeah.
The twins. Yeah. We forgot to mention Rosamund Pike is in this movie. I feel like she's gone on to like, you know, she was in Gone Girl.
Yeah, was she at?
She's gone on.
Did she
to
do
have,
anything before this? Really, or was this kind of like?
I feel like I haven't seen enough of her work, especially prior to this and Gone Girl. I think Gone Girl, or I guess this, but like Gone Girl was the first one where I was like, holy shit, like she can really act. But yeah, I love to just like little moments upon rewatch where it's like the first time you're watching it, maybe some people got this. I don't think I did. Again, 2013, so I had to have been 14 or 15 years old at the point. Yeah, like I don't, whatever. But when Oliver, they call him O-Man because he used to have a scar on the side of his head. Oliver, Martin Freeman's character, he gets replaced at a certain point in the movie. His character leaves, and then when he comes back, he's replaced with a robot, which you don't find out until a little bit later, in a very funny way, because I forget which character does it, but one of them smashes his head, and everyone's like, "What the?"
Yeah, it's
fuck?
Andy when he smashes his head with the bar stool.
Andy has one of my favorite moments in the film because so once the crew of men realize that they're a part of this alien invasion and they don't really know what to do, they have this plan. I think it's Gary is like, we should just continue doing the pub crawl, make things look normal, make us look normal. Like we don't want to draw attention to ourselves because they can't know that we know. And it's later in the film, and at this point they're all shit faced, they're all super drunk. I don't know, 7-8 pints in, maybe 9 or whatever. And
Andy's like 5 shots in.
And yeah, Andy takes 5 shots, and it's when he's trying to explain why they're continuing to do the pub crawl, and he's like, we know that they know. We can't let them know that we know that they know that we know that they know. And then he like tries to walk out the door, but he just like punches his hand through the glass.
That's like one of Nick Frost's like top comedy moments for me. And like when he's just like slurring his words and he just says, "So fuck it," and then he turns around and he just like smashes the glass, like bobbles into the door.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my gosh. Another good one, the hole in the wall. That's when they crash the car into the bar, causing a literal hole in the wall. Obviously, the world's end being the name of the movie, and the world is ending. This one. So I want to talk about 2 things. First off, quick mention. The fight scenes are excellent.
They're
in
insane.
This movie. Like the choreographed fight scenes are like really, really good for just like a movie that's not about fight scenes. Like the choreography, just the way it's filmed, it's super smooth, fluid, looks great. I love all the practical prosthetic effects with the they call them blanks in the movie, but the robots, and anytime like a body limb comes flying off. We mentioned the scene with the twins, and at one point the twins, like I think it like her. What is it? She puts the other one's legs on her where her arms are supposed to be, and they just start like spinning around like helicopter blades. That's a great little moment.
Even just like in the bathroom, the camera work in that whole scene is just insane. It's so well done.
Well, that's why when I would watch because like I said, I watched World's End first, and I was like, holy shit, the fight scenes I forgot are just so well filmed in this, and like there's not a ton of cuts or edits. And then rewatching Hot Fuzz, and I was like, oh wait, no, it's like done purposefully. It has intent. There's a reason it looks like this. But yeah, man, with the World's End, I just the biggest thing though is I do really want to talk about the kind of just emotional aspects of the film, the drama. Like we said, Gary starts out the film with this monologue, and the way he's recounting it is like this fond memory, and then come to find out, oh, he's in AA. Later on in the film, way late down, third act, shit's getting real. I think it's just Andy and Gary, and he pulls his sleeve down. I think Andy pulls Gary's sleeve down, and you see that Gary has a hospital bracelet. And
right, he's bandaged, so like he's like suicidal.
Yeah, it's implied heavily that he tried to commit suicide, and to me, this is probably like just the most emotional moment and the most emotionally resonant moment in the entire Cornetto trilogy for me personal. And I want to apologize ahead of time, guys. I don't want to get too personal, but it's applicable because I think personal experience can change the way you view a movie. But with The World's End, it's obviously that Gary is struggling with addiction. I myself have had problems in the past with addiction, with just different things, alcohol being a problem in the movie. And when at first you're watching the movie and it's like Gary's whole idea is to just continue to do the pub crawl because, we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. And then you realize, he just wants to keep drinking. He just really wants to just keep drinking these pints because he has a severe problem. And you get that moment in the second to last bar, or maybe it is the last bar, where Andy and Gary are the final two. It's just them. And Gary is so adamant about drinking that final pint, and Andy is just begging him to please give it up. Let's get out of here. Please just give it up. And he has this really, really fucking brutally honest line that just hits home every time. And he says, how do you know? I think he says, how do you know you're drunk if you're never sober? Mm-hmm. And Gary, in a really great delivery from Simon Pegg, says, I don't want to be sober. Mm-hmm. And just, they're literally fighting each other because Andy is trying to stop him from drinking another pint. And it's just, I don't know, Gary struggling with addiction in this movie, and him really, and like, obviously I'm not in my 30s or 40s now, I'm only 27, but even at this point in my life, kind of looking back and like being like, man, those times in college were great. I really wish I could relive those. And that sounds like sad when you say it out loud, but also like it is a reality. Like there are certain times in your life, especially when you're younger, that are just easier and better and you're more happy than you are in your present day. And I think this film just tackles those themes of addiction and lack of self-control and just regretting decisions you've made in life and what kind of person you've turned out to become. I think that for me is why I disagree when you were talking about how Shaun of the Dead just hits the emotional beats better, because this one for me, I think the setup of Gary's character followed by that really big moment with Andy and Gary, and again I can't remember if it's the second or third or second to last or the last bar, but when they have that just altercation and it's just like, holy shit, Gary is more fucked up than we thought. Like he's really suffering from an issue. And to me, it's just hitting those beats and those thematic, things throughout the film that to me put this slightly above Shaun in terms of the emotional impact department. Yeah, sure. You don't have his stepfather dying just as they're starting to connect. You don't have him having to kill his mom. Those are, to me, like, they're sad moments. They're really sad. But those moments are in a lot of zombie movies. That's what I expect from a zombie movie. Whereas a movie about a group of friends, going on a pub crawl together, I don't expect them to hit me in the feels and just resonate that much and just get that dark, It's, I don't know.
So that whole scene in The World's End, like in that bar with him and Andy, that's like their highlight to me in terms of like them two interacting with each other. I think that is both their best scene together. Simon Pegg is kind of like on par with how he was in Shaun. I just think he's kind of like more consistent, like acting his ass off throughout that movie.
I think they give him more to do in World's End.
Gary seems like he is nuanced throughout it, but not, I don't think as much. Like I feel like he does kind of play it where it feels a little easier of a role to me in majority of this movie, where he kind of is playing a similar character to Ed. He has really nice moments when he's one-on-one.
I don't see him like Ed though.
No, like similar, like the fuck up. The fuck up that's like just like the goofy, like can't be taken seriously character. He has really good moments when he's one-on-one, like when he's with Sam. He has like those really subtle moments. I almost wish I got a little bit more of that. Because the final payoff is so good that like, but it works. It does work because he's obviously like bottling up, like, and that's very normal. So like I get it. I just think his role throughout Shaun of the Dead just brings the emotional level up for me. However, I do think World's End is heavier emotionally, if that makes sense. So the emotional scenes are just more frequent and effective for me in Shaun of the Dead, but that scene in World's End kind of peaks where Shaun peaks also. It's just it's one versus like a very consistent presence in Shaun, and it works for me.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, like to me, the most emotional scene from just like a drama perspective is like the scene with in Shaun, at least with Philip in the car, because it's these two characters who have had this animosity together. But whereas I feel like a scene or a film like Shaun of the Dead, where I really wanted more of that development between those two characters, I feel like this film does that legwork to develop these characters enough, to develop Gary enough to where it's not just like an out of left field. It is kind of, but it works in Shaun. It does come a little out of left field because these characters have really never gotten along. So I don't want to say it comes across as like a last minute, like deathbed kind of thing, but that's really kind of what it is, And like, it is sad though, because it's Philip explaining why he acted the way he acted, why he treated Shaun the way he treated him, coming into his life at a point where Shaun had already, he wasn't like a 5-6-year-old kid. He was 12, 13 years old when Philip came into his life. And that's a very hard position for a stepfather to step into, and how he was hard on him solely because he just wanted the best for him and he wanted him to become successful. And that is sad. And I'm not like downplaying that. But then you get to a film like The World's End, where I just feel like maybe Edgar Wright as a writer and director, and maybe even Simon Pegg as an actor, they just understood a little bit more on how to make those emotional payoffs work better. Because I feel like that moment with Andy and Gary works so well because of the foundation of the rest of the film. The whole relationship and dynamic between Philip and Sean is not really delved into.
I think you're citing the wrong part of Sean. I don't think that's the highlight of Sean's emotional core. I think it's a culmination of everything, because it's like,
I think that's the saddest
really
moment.
Oh, it's not even close for me. No, I think Barbara is the saddest moment. That whole sequence.
That's sad, but again, like, whereas, like, I think The World's End, like, that sad moment really just strikes an emotional chord. It's like, I go into a zombie movie, I expect these characters
But you think the Philip scene is supposed to be more emotional than Barbara's?
I think that packs a bigger emotional punch for me, because it's like seeing Sean break down at this guy who he's not even a big fan of, because this guy is confessing, like, as he's dying, hey, this is why I was the way I was. I wanted better. I wanted you to be better. And like, you get the vibe, like, he thought that they just had more time to fix their relationship. And the fact that this is, like, really the end. Like, Sean loved his mom. He has to kill his mom. It's sad. It hurts. It sucks. It hits me in the emotional feels. But that little interaction between Andy and Gary in World's End, where he's like, how do you know you're drunk if you're never sober? And him just responding, like, almost screaming at Andy, I don't want to be sober. Because when I'm sober, that's when I feel the pain. That's when life hits me. That's when reality hits. When I'm not sober, when I'm always loaded, when I'm on drugs, there's at least that blissful ignorance. I don't have to acknowledge the rest of the world. And it's just, in my opinion, that's why I think at this point, like, I enjoy the script in The World's End a little bit more, is because I think the emotional payoff works better because it's set up better.
Listen, that's fair. But I don't know. I do think you're holding a lot. And listen, I love that moment. That's a great character moment. I think you're putting a lot of weight into that one scene, in terms of, like, saying this is a better script just because of that one moment.
No, I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's like an overall better script. I think Sean is probably a little tighter, a little snappier, a little more well-paced. I think Sean is probably the best pacing of the three films, if I had to, like, pick one. I think they're all very well-paced for what they achieve, but if I had to pick one that I think did it the best, it's probably Sean. Like, it really knows when to trim stuff, when to let stuff breathe. But just I think, I didn't say it, but I think Hot Fuzz maybe, like, could have ended, like, 5 minutes sooner. Again, like, I love it, so I don't have any issue with it going on a little bit longer. But if I were to criticize something like that, but no, it's more so just I think Sean. I don't want to say it's, because it's not generic. It's not something that's, like, I wouldn't even say, like, cliched or stereotypical. But stuff in Sean, and again, it's parodying, it's satirizing zombie movies. Stuff that I've seen in Sean, I've seen in a lot of other movies. Whereas I feel like The World's End is a little bit more unique in its inception.
You think so?
Like, I think the idea...
I've seen that.
I definitely think so.
I've seen that before. I've seen addiction struggle in movies before. It's just that you're not...
Not the addiction and struggling. I think wrapping up an alien invasion in this film, where this character, mainly Gary, is trying to recapture the spirits of his youth with his old high school friends, wrapping that drama of him being a failure in life, having these addiction problems, having a lot of struggle with, drugs and alcohol, and mixing that in with the alien invasion, with the conformity stuff. I think out of the three, that's why I think it has the most interesting script, because I think the characters are a little fresher, they're a little more interesting, and I just think they're just developed a little bit more. You want to talk about, like, cast of characters getting developed. I know you kind of put Sean on that pedestal above Hot Fuzz, and I agree in that department. But in terms of developing the entire cast of, like, main characters, I think maybe The World's End does it the best, because you really get a lot, or at least enough, for each of the five friends.
I think it's better. I think it is better than Hot Fuzz, and I think it's on par with Sean. That's what I used to always say. I think World's End has, like, the best ensemble. I'm not sure if I agree with that anymore. It's pretty equal, I think, to Sean.
do.
But I think because the characters aren't as memorable in like totally as they are in Sean. They're good and they're really good in the movie, but like you get very basic knowledge of these. Like you don't get that much from Oliver. He's just good. Like Martin Freeman's just good, but it's not like he's not
That's
that
true.
interesting. Neither is Peter. Like Peter's kind of like the bullied kid that just like followed his.
Oh, are you kidding me? The stuff with his bully?
Yeah, no, that's a good scene.
I love that.
That's a really good scene. But I'm saying,
That's one of the best emotional
but
moments.
he's not. But I don't think he's like. He's not that discovered.
Okay, what more do you get from Diana and David in Sean than you get from like Pete?
I think
in
it's.
this, or
I
Steven?
think it's time spent, with them. Like it's not really.
You're with them the entire movie though.
Like, but I don't think Peter has that strong of a presence as much as like David does in Sean. And I'm not even saying like David's a better written character. I'm not saying he's a better like overall character, but I'm saying there is Pete. You get Pete.
They're definitely on
Pete,
screen
you get,
more.
He's on screen literally, but I'm saying like he's very he's kind of falls to the background a little bit. You get a nice.
Oh,
He does. He does. He
is an entire emotional
has one.
scene dedicated to him.
He
with
has
that
one.
bully.
Yeah.
I mean, when he goes after him in the woods, that's
it plays on that. Yeah, it plays on that one thing. But like I'm saying, Oliver, even like Steven's a fun character. I wouldn't say he's like that. Like I don't know. I think
like I said, they're given enough. I think, and I think they're given a little bit more than Diane and David.
Probably, but there's still like there's a slew of characters in Shaun of the Dead that kind of progress his character. Even Pete, like he doesn't even have as much presence, but you feel the weight of his existence to Sean's arc, his journey. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what it does for me.
fair.
But I'm not saying World's End hits the emotional core more than Hot Fuzz for me. But
Yeah, I just think when I'm thinking of all three of the films, I think to me they all do something better than the other. I think Sean is probably the tightest and the snappiest, and you know it does have so many of those great emotional moments. I think Hot Fuzz is the funniest and the most clever, and I think The World's End to me is maybe the best in terms of filmmaking. I think it's the best shot of the bunch. In terms of just cinematography, there's just a lot of really nice shots in this movie, great framing. We talked about the choreography of the fight scenes, and I think this one of the small issues I had with Shaun of the Dead, and I kind of mentioned it, is I think Shaun has the worst lighting of the three, whereas I think The World's End just probably has the best lighting of the bunch, a little bit more contrast. And probably a lot of that has to do with a lot of it taking place at night, whereas a lot of the majority of the other two films daytime. But I don't know, The World's End I think looks the best just on a visual level, and again, I really love a lot of those themes that they play with, and I think they explore Gary's character in a very, I don't know, interesting way. And again, setting that all with like this alien invasion backdrop, it's just like a very unique script. And like, I know you're gonna hate me for comparing the two, but it's like the same reason that I love a film like The Substance. It's taking this idea of beauty standards and self-hatred and using that as like the backdrop for this body horror satire comedy. Like I love when you take like a good thematic idea and concept and then you mix it with a really bonkers out there concept, like when you mend the two worlds. It's like when we talked about Being John Malkovich and how Charlie Kaufman wanted to combine these two ideas he had, and the one was a guy falling in love with a woman who wasn't his wife, combined with a portal that takes you into the mind of Being John Malkovich. Like I love taking two ideas that really don't match on paper and just really fundamentally bringing them together and blending the two in a really seamless way.
beauty standards and body horror, that does sound like it meshes well.
It does, but I've never really... Good. It does, but I don't know. I guess maybe it does lend itself. I personally haven't seen it used in that way.
Does the alien invasion, like, is it just like, I'm saying just because it's an alien invasion and then you throw in themes of addiction and stuff like that, just because you mix things that you would never expect to go together, does it automatically get points, or do you think there's a reason? Like, does really?
You know how much I value.
But if you just do something, like I get they handle both genres like and themes very well, but I'm saying does it mix in with the alien invasion, those other themes of addiction? I mean, you could.
I think the addiction doesn't really particularly connect with it, but I think the idea of like we talked about with Gary, his idea of not being able to conform to society and like societal norms, that being a big theme with the robots who all want conformity. Yeah. But again, I think like the emotional weight of his addiction and him struggling with it and his just shortcomings as a friend and a person, I think that all blends really well. And we didn't really talk about it, but I just love too how, and this kind of ties into one of my favorite trivia facts, but this probably has one of the more dark and dour endings of the bunch. I think it's easily the darkest film of the three. And even,
you think so?
This is my note, but I think it's easily the darkest of the three. And I think Simon Pegg, this is his favorite of the trilogy because it's the darkest, he said.
It is, like, I think visually it is the darkest, but like if you think about it, everybody gets like a happy ending though.
No, not visually. I think it like thematically and story-wise it's the darkest.
But everyone kind of gets a happy ending in this.
Two of the characters die and get replaced, and the world goes into an apocalypse.
Yeah, but within that world, they are like they are like, it's not like they're dead. Like Oliver kind of goes,
no, they're not dead. But compare it to the other two. Hot Fuzz ends, all is well. I wanted to bring it up because we didn't really talk about it in Hot Fuzz, but not a single character dies in that movie. Even though the entire final climax is this huge shootout, every single character survives. Even when a huge sea mine goes off in the end in the police station, they all survive.
Hot Fuzz might be the lightest.
Survives after getting shot.
It's tough because
Hot Fuzz has the lightest, but even Shaun of the Dead, dude. What changes by the end? You know, David dies,
but I'm
his mom dies, but like the world goes back to normal.
But the thing is, hold on, the World's End. You said two characters died, even though they're replaced, they're blanks. But your whole thing with Shaun is that it's too clean, it's too happy. Ed is replaced by being a zombie.
Yeah, but Shaun still gets to go and play
and
video
Oliver
games
still
with
gets
him.
to sell houses, and Pete is.
That's not Oliver.
But Pete is a better father now.
It's not Pete.
And it's not Ed. It's a zombified Ed. It's not really Ed.
Who can still apparently play PlayStation 2.
He's just holding the controller. I don't think he's even playing.
But literally, we see the zombie apocalypse play out in one day. Pretty much by the end of it, it's pretty clear. Okay, we've got a handle on this. Things are fine. Whereas I think the World's End, it ends literally with them telling the aliens to fuck off, and because of that, a huge apocalypse occurs. Like it's literally the world's end. Like they get their freedom, they get sort of emancipated from this alien conformity control thing. But
here's the thing:
the world ends. It's an apocalypse.
Gary King, we can agree that Gary King is happier than he was when the world was good. That's what I like about it. Is that yes, the world. On
a character level, but I think on a whole story level, it ends.
Well, yeah, because everyone else's lives are fucked. Yeah, the world gets obliterated.
Yeah. So then, what are we
but
arguing
I'm saying
about?
The characters still kind of get their happy ending, and that's what they talked about this in the commentary. They were like, I think Edgar Wright even said this is like almost. I don't know if he said it or if I just. No, it might have been like a video I watched where they said this is almost like the happiest because everyone kind of. Gets a completed arc, like sort of, and they talk about mostly Gary because Gary completely evolves into what Andy was trying to like, you know,
he gets
his group of friends and he gets sober. So it kind of like tells you it was never about the drinking, it was about the clinging onto like what was important to him. So he gets his happy ending. So it is darker, kind of like
I didn't say it was like. It's not like, you know, fucking like a movie about like the Holocaust. Like it still is a comedy. I just think it has the darkest end of the three. And it's not just the darkest end. I think it's the darkest film of the three. Like I think like the stuff dealing with his addiction. And
it is the darkest.
His, like attempted.
It's 100% the darkest.
I think it has like the darkest script.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what do you argue?
The themes are the darkest, but I'm saying like between that and Shaun, there's like, I think because Shaun ends on a more like positive note. I think that's why. But like, if you really look at it, look at Shaun's life. Look how many people he just fucking lost. Gary King,
and he still gets to play PlayStation with his best friend, and
still
he got
lost
his
your fucking
girlfriend back.
mom. Yeah.
He was a shit son anyway. He was a terrible son. But yeah, no, I mean, like in terms of, I guess, back to The World's End and just like on its own, I think it just has like really great pacing. I think the music, we were kind of talking about the soundtrack before. This is the one where I noticed the soundtrack the most out of the three films, other than like the Don't Stop Me Now scene from the first, or from Shaun of the Dead. But in this one, a lot of great tracks. I think they're used really well. It feels like while writing the script, like Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg had a lot of these songs in mind when they were writing it, as opposed to a lot of films that just pick a popular song afterwards. There's the one I had mentioned beforehand, like my favorite song and one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the Doors song that they use when they have that funny moment when they walk into the one pub, and it's just like kind of a wide medium shot of the five of them, and they each drink their beer, and like them burping and speaking is in sync with the song from the Doors, and they're like, I forget exactly what they say, but they say drinking beer, good, shall we? And then they like leave, and then like the rest of the song kind of plays in, and it's all just, again, from an editing perspective, it's all just timed and, you know, really calculated with the music, the sound effects, the visuals, the writing, the dialogue. It's so much of it is just, you know, again, working really well in tandem. It's what filmmaking is. It's using all of those different, you know, assets and tools all in tandem to really create a good, enjoyable experience. And I think The World's End really nails so many of those aspects. Again, I think it's probably the best shot of the three. I don't think it's as funny as Hot Fuzz, but yeah, it really does so much for me that, I don't know, I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah,
I will say I don't love it as much as Hot Fuzz and Shaun, but you know, these movies I love. It feels like I love them almost equally, but I think I do appreciate a little bit more from Shaun and Hot Fuzz, but I really do appreciate that World's End really goes for it in terms of like how dark it does go.
With the drama. Do you think that your childhood connection to Shaun of the Dead has any play in it?
It could not for like I think it's the best, because like I think I just, as I got older, I realized how good it was. Like it wasn't like, it's not like it was like a great, to be honest, when I first saw it, I thought it was just one of those movies, like Scary Movie. I thought it was just like I think because I just saw the title Shaun of the Dead, I was like, oh, they're just trying to like poke fun at Dawn of the Dead. You know, I didn't know what I was talking about. But I thought it was just like a funny movie. I didn't think it actually like had anything to offer
that was
dramatically. But
that's the same experience, like I said, like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about that movie, how like when I saw it, I put it on the same level as like Zombieland, and now I'm like,
I think
one is a great film, the other.
But The World's End, my first, like I was older, so I saw it, and I feel like once you're hit with that emotional dagger, it's from like Gary King, it almost like just, it makes you, I don't know. I feel like it's like it made me be like, is this, like I did question, is this the best? But I was like, I can't put all that weight on that one moment, even though that very like that issue is very important to me. Like that's something I've seen people deal with. That's something I haven't dealt with it myself, but I've seen just enough people I'm close to deal with that. And I think it's almost cheating, but it's not, because like personal experience is always going to enhance your love for something. But it doesn't feel as complete as Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead do. Like there's a couple questions I do ask myself, like with the final confrontation with the network. Does it feel a little too easy that they're defeated?
No, because I mean they're not defeated. It's just Gary's too stubborn, and he tells him to fuck off. My issue with maybe the script is, I think that that in both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, I think by the end of that film, Shaun has a really good completed character arc that I feel like is super developed. Same with Hot Fuzz. Like the events of both of those films change the characters, and I can see how and why they changed them. when I'm watching The World's End and it kind of has that scene, and then in the final bar they have the drop down that takes them down to where the the hive of aliens are, and they kind of tell them to fuck off. Cut to the next sort of scene, or they kind of go back to the same hill from the opening monologue, and they now, instead of a sunrise, it's like all these flares and fire, which I read a fun fact that a bunch of the local residents nearby from neighboring towns thought that there was like a huge fire going on because of the lighting setup that they had to kind of film all of that. So I thought that was kind of fun. But no, I just feel like I like that Gary gets sober. I like that final kind of shot where now it switches to Nick Frost, and he's talking about life after the apocalypse began, where, the blanks woke up a couple days later and just started living normal lives, and some people were happier because of it. You had mentioned that Oliver becomes a better father, Pete becomes a better father. Oliver still is selling houses and whatnot. And then he's like, oh, I never heard of Gary. Or I never heard what happened to Gary. We lost touch after, whatever. And you get that final scene of Gary arriving with the blanks, who are the younger versions of him and his friends. And he orders water. He orders water for them, showing that he's sober now. But I just don't see what about that final climax leads him to getting sober. Whereas I feel like the events of Hot Fuzz and the events of Shaun of the Dead, I can understand the emotional beats that led him to that character change. It's not as, I think, well handled in The World's End in that.
So that's actually a good point, because I was gonna kind of bring that up. Does it almost feel like they spent so much time building this up, and it's almost like they forgot about it? They didn't act like, it's not like they forgot about it, but like it almost feels like it's never. And I get we're at the end of the film, but is that the price you pay for waiting so long to give you that payoff, and you don't really, and you kind of forget about it? It's like it feels thrown to the wayside a little bit.
It's a little underbaked.
Because it hits so well.
Not as
it hits so well when they're interacting, because they're both just outstanding in that scene. And I mean, Gary's just saying very like relatable things to anyone that was very optimistic. We talked about the Before trilogy, how optimistic they were, and this is why Edgar Wright said this is like the Before Midnight, because you're just so let down. And he's talking about exactly how he felt. He's saying it never got better than that night. That was supposed to be the beginning of my life. And he was saying like all that promise was just a big lie. And I love even when Andy says, you don't have to do this, and he just looks at the glass and he just says, yeah, I do. And then they're dropped down, and it's almost like that emotion, it kind of just reverts back to like he does kind of like complete his arc in the sense of like he has that opportunity to be young forever, and he kind of like kills that version of himself and kind of accepts himself. But like,
oh yeah,
he does.
Okay, that is.
He does have
scene.
that. So like, it's not like they're not like.
I guess it is,
but it happens so quick. I think so I don't know.
Yeah.
So
no, that's fair. I guess there is that scene, right? It's not completely thrown to the wayside. I guess I stand by. It's a little underbaked. I think in the previous two films, I see a little bit and I understand a little bit more why the character change happens. But it's not horrible. It's just a little bit. If I'm looking for things to criticize, it is a little underdeveloped. But I mean, it is still a completed character arc. It's just not as, in that last part, it's not as clear why he does make that change.
Yeah.
But
let me see. Do I have any?
I mean, I don't really.
Yeah, what other? Let me see. Oh, small note that Edgar Wright did say, they kind of modeled the aliens / blanks to be have their limbs pop off. They said we wanted to do like model it like an action figure. So it kind of like represents this like nostalgic thing.
Oh, okay.
So like when they're fighting with these things, it's almost like the adults are like playing with action figures. So that's kind of like, obviously like a central theme of like, clinging on to say like your youth. So that was something that I thought was interesting. I was like, man, even like you bring it down to the how limbs come off and you connect it to like your central themes. It's just crazy how much attention he just puts in. But
there's just so much in like the writing, and again that pre-production of like doing all of that legwork to make sure that all of it feels relevant. Again, no time is wasted. All the fat is trimmed off. Even though this one is again is similar length to Shaun of the Dead, I don't feel like any of the 3 films really just waste any time. Every scene feels like it serves some sort of purpose, to the point where it's like every line of dialogue, like we mentioned, feels like it is done with intent and purpose, which is great.
Let's see here.
I've really kind of gone through all of my thoughts on the film. We didn't really mention it fully. I know Josh made some jokes throughout, but in the first film, I believe it's the strawberry flavor of Cornetto. In the second, it is the vanilla flavor, but the wrapper is blue to resemble police. And then obviously the World's End, it's the mint chocolate chip flavor, which is green to represent extraterrestrials, aliens. That's kind of sort of sci-fi stuff. So that's why you get the Cornetto as the trilogy.
Oh, I should have worn my Cornetto shirt. God damn it. Not that it fucking matters to the audience, but should have wore it for Jake.
Oh, you know who's in that scene. You mentioned that you still thought that at the beginning, the opening, the scene in the AA meeting, Mary's to the left. The guy on the right, it's Pete.
Pete? It is not.
Yeah. It is. That's exactly what this trivia fact says. I thought I remember reading that. Yeah. Pete Serafinowicz. You really couldn't pronounce that?
No. I didn't want to try.
Oh, wait.
That's not him. No.
Wait, am I confused? Maybe this is... Hold on.
No, that's not him.
Hey, if you want to say IMDb live.
He's the guy they ding dong ditch.
Is it?
That's what it shows here.
Then what is IMDb on?
I don't know, but look at that scene. It looks nothing. It's like a really skinny guy. And Pete's like kind of like he's a big guy too. I think he's like jacked.
Okay, yeah, that's weird. All right, IMDb is not.
Yeah, we can't be reading
guys.
trivia from that anymore, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's stupid. A bunch of people found that fact interesting too. Well, it's wrong.
Man.
Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know what else to say.
So I will say this. So my last note here, I did want to say that maybe I'm just gullible, but I saw Simon and Edgar talking, and it seems like they're interested in working on a script together for like another installment in this Cornetto series.
I would rather them just do something new together rather than them do a fourth Cornetto.
Whatever it is, I just want them to write together again and make another film.
Yeah,
like, I don't care what they come
after Last
out
Night
with.
in Soho, I think Edgar really does need a writing partner, so maybe Simon can bring him back to earth.
Yeah. So I'm really pulling for that. That was an interview from last year. They just said we just need to find like a few weeks together. I think our schedules are kind of slowing down, so maybe we can pump something out. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would be absolutely down for them to collab again. Maybe on like a TV series could kind of be cool. Kind of collab on that. TV is huge nowadays. Get like an HBO series or something of that sorts. Again, I don't know if I need another Cornetto one, especially if it's like they can't for some reason get Nick Frost. He's like such a vital part of what makes these films
wants
so
to do
funny.
it.
Yeah,
Nick Frost. Yeah, he said he's down for for another installment. Cool. I'm fine if they do it because I trust whatever they put their hands on is going to be.
It's very clear to me that Edgar Wright has a very clear handle and good concept of what makes good comedy, and he's good at blending drama and comedy. I don't particularly want to see him, voyeur into horror again. I just don't think his style and aesthetic really works with horror. So
yeah.
But shall we wrap this up and get into our ratings?
Oh shit! Yeah, we got to rate. God damn.
Yeah. So let's knock those out of the way. Well, it's all right because I already have mine pretty easily. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Oh, Jake's gonna be so upset with my ratings. I swear, guys, this does not reflect my enjoyment of these movies. Okay, just because I don't give a 10 doesn't mean that I don't love this movie like a 10. All right, I love all these movies like a 10.
Okay.
But I'm gonna bounce Sean with a I'm gonna say a 9.4.
All right.
Out of 10.
All right, I like it. All right, I am. This is crazy. I'm also giving Shaun of the Dead a 9.4 out of 10. That's what I put on my letterbox, and I'm sticking with it. 9.4 out of 10. Absolutely love it. Yeah. I am gonna give Hot Fuzz an easy 10 out of 10. Like I said, it's my favorite comedy. Minor nitpicks in this movie. The fact that I've seen this movie about 40 plus times at this point, and even when I sat down to watch it before we recorded today, again, I was laughing my ass off, like constantly throughout the film, just picking up on little moments that I'd never had kind of caught, or just, re-experiencing some of my favorite moments. I just, it's a 10. I don't see any issues with it. It's flawless.
Well, I am giving Hot Fuzz a 9.3.
I'm fine with it. Anything above a 9 is fine. All right. What do you... Oh, are you about to go below a 9?
Yeah, and guys, it's not reflective of how much I love this movie. I'm trying to separate, because I do think there's kind of a clear answer of like the first two that are better. It's not really what I think World's End does, and I don't think it does anything bad, but I'm going to give World's End an 8.7.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to give The World's End a 9.4. I think it's on the same level as Shaun of the Dead for me. I think Shaun is a little bit funnier. I think it has a really great emotional foundation with a lot of the scenes, but I think where The World's End maybe has a little bit more of an interesting script, and I like a little bit more of the themes that they play with, and I think Gary is a more interesting character than Shaun. I think that Shaun of the Dead is well paced, a little bit more better paced than The World's End. I think, again, Shaun is a little bit funnier, and again, The World's End, I think, is a little bit better shot than Shaun of the Dead. It's, again, where one does something better, I think the other does a different thing better. So I was really having a hard time, and then I realized, wait a minute, I can just give them the same score. So if I was ranking them, it would be Hot Fuzz at 1, and then 2A and 2B would be Shaun of the Dead and World's End. They're very, very much on the same level for me.
Jake is appalled at my 8.7 for some weird reason. Like, that's not a great score. Like, that's not
You're
higher
acting
than...
this whole time. You're like, man, everybody, I don't understand. All these people are down on this one compared to the other two. And then the other two are like 0.8 higher. They're almost a full point higher, Josh.
Yeah, they're. I think
you're
they're
one
better.
of those people.
No, people give this movie like a fucking 6 out of 10.
Nah.
That's actually a fact.
That is
a 6 or
crazy.
7.
I saw the IMDb score was like a 6.9.
Yeah, like this is
but even
universally
the other two,
like
they're like 7 something. Like IMDb is some bullshit. Yeah, I think these are 3 of the best comedy films ever made. A little annoyed.
What do
at
we
the
got
8.7,
for?
But...
What do we got for? You were supposed to predict the Rotten Tomato score for World's End.
Shit. I'm gonna guess an 88%.
89.
Oh fuck! I was 1 off.
Okay, so my me being in the 8s is not that crazy.
I expected you to be smarter than the common man, but it's fine.
But anyway, yeah. So I think overall, I think Shaun, I think it has overall the most like relatable characters, at least for me at this stage of my life. I think it's just easier to relate to them, and again, I think World's End. It does a very good job with its like genre mixing and subgenre methods, but I don't think it's as clean as Shaun and Hot Fuzz. I just don't think it meshes it as well. I think it does come on a little bit more abrupt. If I'm just trying to find things to separate them, I just don't think it's as tight as the other two.
That's fair. I could definitely see that. Again, I think more. I just like when I put the two on the same level. I think I just love what The World's End explores a little bit more, like the idea of like this, trying to relive his past while also dealing with like addiction and substance abuse. I just find his character a little more interesting than Shaun, who's just like an underachiever. It's a little bit more interesting to explore in my opinion. But yeah, no, I all 3 great films, absolutely love all of them. Very few complaints all around. We didn't really talk about many negatives this episode at all, but I'm just realizing, did we decide what we're doing for the next episode?
Oh shit.
We normally have this planned out, and then I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, did we decide on one?
God damn. Should we do Kung Fu Panda?
I want to do Kung Fu Panda.
I'm down for that.
All right, we're gonna be doing the Kung Fu Panda to really rein in the springtime, guys. So we'll probably talk about all 4 of those in one episode. I don't think that needs to be split up. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for the Kung Fu Panda quadrilogy, because now there's 4 of them, make sure to watch those before you watch the next episode. If you guys don't know, we upload every other Tuesday, so you get 2 episodes every month. And Josh, do you want to plug our socials, and then we will get on out of here?
Yeah, guys. So, give us a follow mainly on Instagram. That's where you're going to see us most active at Franchise Deep Dive. Feel free to always comment, DM us any suggestions or input you have. Any way we can get better, we're always love to improve. And if you prefer email, you can email us at franchisedeepdive@gmail. But yeah, let us know what your favorite is out of the Cornetto Trilogy. Give us a nice ranking, and let's see where you put World's End, since my rating was just too egregious for Jake.
I really thought you were going to give it like a 9 or a 9.1. I really thought you considered all 3 of these really close to each other, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, a 9.2 and an 8.7 are very close in my eyes.
You gave it a 9.3, right?
Sorry, 9.3. That's still really close. 0.6.
It's not, because I know how, like, to the decimal you put things. Like, you're more in tune with that than I am.
Yeah.
So I know that a 0.8 higher for you is a bigger gap than it is for me.
They're just better movies. They just handle it better. They just handle their script better, I think. They handle their characters overall better. But yeah, I love these movies almost all at a 10. So I hope everyone's happy. These are 3 of like some of my favorite films. My favorite films are not always going to be 10s, guys. But yeah, so
I got one question for you. Oh wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Do we have more to plug?
No. I was just gonna say keep an eye out for more updates with our episodes. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. And also don't forget, guys, I said I would plug it again at the end. Check over on our Patreon if you like our content. We do Watchlist Wednesdays. They air opposite every Wednesday of our regular episodes. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, $2 a month, like I said, you get an episode every week. I'm also going to start uploading some more solo content. I have some ideas for what I'm going to call Slasher Saturdays. I'm thinking about just doing like 30-minute solo episodes where I just talk about 2 or 3 slashers that some you might know, some you might have heard of, some you may have never heard of. But I think that'll be kind of fun and just, a little bit, less formatted, and just me just talking about my thoughts on them and whatnot. But I have a question for you, Josh, before we get out of here.
Oh yeah, lay it on me.
Why was Cinderella so bad at soccer?
Slippers.
No, it's because she kept running away from the ball. All right, guys, before my recorder dies for the 5th time this episode, we'll get on out of here. Again, last time we'll be doing the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. That episode will air 2 weeks from now on Tuesday. And again, make sure to follow us, check us out, interact with us on our social medias. Like Josh said, if you want to leave a comment on Spotify or on our YouTube. I don't know if we mentioned it, but we're on 3 different platforms. We upload our episodes to my YouTube channel, Former Film Student, so you can check us out there. Subscribe to me if you want to hear some of my other solo content. And then also you can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And then again, you can leave a comment on Spotify and also obviously on YouTube. So let us know your ranking of these 3 films, and I'd love to hear what your scores are and what's your favorite of the 3 and why it's your favorite. I always love to hear why someone's favorite movie is what it is for this specific trilogy, because again, I think we're both in the same realm, that even though I know you clearly think that The World's End is pretty terrible, but I think we can all agree that this is one of those trilogies where, kind of like the Before trilogy, neither of us have a problem with any of the 3 being someone's favorite.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah. So even though Josh hates The World's End.
Yeah, I do, guys. Hate it.
Gave it a lower score than Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. So
I did. Whoa, I did not.
Wait, what'd you give Deathly Hallows Part 2?
8.4. Why don't you settle down?
I thought you gave it like an 8.7.
No, I didn't.
Then what did you give Prisoner of Azkaban?
8.3.
But you put Deathly Hallows at number 1 on your list.
8.4.
Oh, okay. I'm dumb. I thought you said 8.2 for a sec. Okay, yeah. It all makes sense now. Josh is crazy. He's on crack. All right, guys. So we're going to get on out of here. This was fun. It went a little longer than we thought it would, but that happens every single time we record, so get used to it. And that's it for today, guys. Goodbye.
Later.